A typical referral wasn't enough to summon Mr. Hayes, considering the call Leo had made to his senior not long ago, followed by Governor Zhao's personal appearance to rattle some cages. Leo could deduce the truth. This meeting was happening at the governor's behest. Sure enough, when he arrived at the tea house, Mr. Hayes had chosen and pushed open the door to the private room. Two men were already seated at the table. One was in his 30s with a gentle, refined aura, Mr. Hayes himself. The other was in his 40s with a square, resolute face and an air of authority that commanded respect without a word. Even though Leo had mentally prepared himself, recognizing the man's identity still sent a jolt of surprise through him. He couldn't help but marvel internally. Damn, the governor really delivers. It was the first time in 2 lifetimes he'd seen this man in person. But in his previous life, he'd seen him in the East Bay News and papers more than once. Evan Grant, the current commissioner of the East Bay Police Department. His rank was equivalent to a major general. The commissioner position was often held by a deputy mayor, a sign of its importance. But Grant was unusually young. In his prime at 40-something, his list of accomplishments was so stellar that his promotion had been unprecedented. And Leo knew that in 4 years, this man would be promoted again, becoming deputy mayor and even landing a seat on the city's standing committee. His future was boundless. Even without looking years ahead, right now, as the head of the city's police force, he was a hard-nosed, powerful figure in East Bay. Leo hadn't expected it. He was also under Governor Zhao's banner. Leo was impressed. His senior had only been in office for a few months, and while he appeared calm and unassuming, he had already gathered such capable allies. As expected of the governor, his strategies were flawless. No wonder my last attempt to swipe a fruit basket was so effortlessly thwarted, Leo thought with a grimace. These old foxes really are on another level. His thoughts had wandered. Seeing Leo enter, Mr. Hayes stood up with a smile. Come. Let me make an introduction. As the governor's chief of staff, Mr. Hayes was a master of social graces. Despite the differences in age and status among the 3 men, he skillfully created a warm and harmonious atmosphere. From the moment they met, it felt natural with no awkwardness. Commissioner Grant, a military veteran, still carried the sharp, efficient air of a soldier despite his years in the police force. He extended a hand and gave Leo's a firm shake. Evan Grant, Leo Wallace, I've heard a lot about you. Leo returned the firm handshake, his smile humble and genuine. Not at all, Commissioner. The pleasure is all mine. I've heard a lot about you two. After the pleasantries, the 3 of them sat down and began to chat over tea. Mr. Hayes joked that Leo and Commissioner Grant were clearly fated to meet and should toast to it. This piqued Grant's curiosity. When he asked why, Leo explained with a grin, last year, Happiness sponsored the East Bay Comic and Anime Fest. We collaborated with the local precinct under your command. Captain Shing there helped us out a lot. Realization dawned on Grant's face, and he slapped his forehead. Right, I remember that. Captain Shing is one of my best men. Also a veteran, came out of the Vanguard Company of the Northern Military Region. The commissioner was a straightforward and hearty man. He launched into stories about his military days with great enthusiasm, especially when he mentioned Captain Shing's old unit. He spoke of a legendary soldier from that Vanguard battalion, a man who could face a landslide without flinching. It was the stuff of legends. Leo played the part of an engaged audience, nodding and expressing his admiration. Beside them, Mr. Hayes just smiled. Commissioner, that's not the only connection I was talking about. Grant paused. There's more. Both men turned their gazes to Leo. Leo scratched his head. All right. Last semester, a few classmates and I ran into some thugs at the rollerblading rink in the park. We ended up escorting them to the police station. Grant blinked, then it hit him again. Oh, I think I heard about that too. A few small-time thugs are nothing, but after that guy Yin Chong from the Dynasty Lounge got taken down, his whole operation fractured. His old territory split into several factions, and those punks you ran into had taken over a piece of it. The commissioner was getting animated again, ready to regale them with the full story of the Dynasty Lounge takedown. But he noticed Mr. Hayes looking at Leo with a strange, knowing smile. Confused, Grant looked at Leo as well. Leo Wallace, model citizen, scratched his head again, looking embarrassed. All right, I happened to be there for that, too. I'm the one who called the police. Grant was stunned. He waved his hands dismissively. No, that can't be right. I'm talking about a group of students, led by a young couple. The same couple who had caught a wanted fugitive on a train a while back. Leo nodded humbly. Right, that was also me. Evan Grant. The seasoned commissioner's jaw dropped. Then, the fugitive who escaped, and was caught again last winter in the downtown shopping district. Leo nodded a bit awkwardly. Yeah, that was me too. Grant was utterly floored. He stared at Leo as if he were looking at some kind of mythical creature. Wait a second. Is your last name Wallace, or are you just a magnet for trouble? Mister. Hayes finally burst out laughing, clapping Grant on the shoulder. You have no idea. This kid has done so much more. Things you couldn't even imagine. Catching a fugitive on a train was nothing. Yin Chong at the Dynasty Lounge was just another underworld thug. But the young man sitting before them? This was the man who dared to brazenly try and steal a fruit basket from right under the nose of the most powerful man in East Bay. The meeting was mostly casual conversation. From Commissioner Grant's words, Leo confirmed his suspicions. Governor Zhao had personally arranged this, prompting the busy police commissioner to make time to meet with the CSO of Happy Nest. Grant gave his word that the police department would fully cooperate with the development of the public information platform and the anti-rumor initiative. Beyond business, the two men hit it off. Despite being flabbergasted by Leo's knack for finding trouble, the commissioner found he genuinely liked the young man. As the meeting concluded and they stood to leave, the high-ranking police chief handed Leo his card. He clapped him on the shoulder with a hearty laugh. Stay in touch, kid, whether it's business or not. That simple sentence held a weight of promise and power that needed no further explanation. Leo smiled and thanked him. He hailed a cab at the roadside, said his goodbyes to Mr. Hayes and Commissioner Grant, and drove off. The governor's chief of staff and the city's police commissioner watched the taxi disappear into the distance. Mr. Hayes turned to Grant and asked with a smile, "So, what do you think?" Grant let out a sigh. Incredible. He certainly lives up to the governor's assessment. If it were just about his title as CSO of Happy Nest, even for someone so impressively young, it wouldn't have been enough to warrant such a warm reception from the East Bay Police Commissioner. But before he came, his superior, Governor Zhao, had personally briefed him. He had added with a smile, "That kid, he's one of the very few people I've personally walked to the door in all my years." Grant hadn't fully understood the meaning behind those words, but hearing them had been enough to leave him in awe, scarcely able to imagine the implications. Now, mentioning it to the governor's right-hand man, he saw Mr. Hayes pause for a moment. Then, as if he understood, a twitch appeared at the corner of his mouth. With a wry expression that was equal parts admiration and exasperation, he sighed. Well, yeah, you have to walk him to the door. Otherwise, he might steal something on the way out. A morning at the office, an afternoon in a tea house. After a busy day, Leo didn't feel tired as he sat in the cab heading home. In fact, he was in a good mood. He had just made a powerful new ally in Evan Grant. With his support, building Happy Nest public information platform and its anti-rumor system will be much smoother. With this connection, he could practically run wild in East Bay, terrorizing the populace and doing whatever he wanted. Wait, no, that wasn't right. He was Leo Hammer Wallace, a paragon of virtue. He wouldn't do such things. In any case, his network had leveled up. The governor had really come through. As a reward, he'd only swipe one fruit basket next time he visited. As Leo sat in the taxi, lost in his calculations, his phone rang. He answered it. It was his girlfriend. Claire was at home today, calling to remind him, remember to get groceries. We're having guests tonight. The reminder jogged Leo's memory. That's right. This weekend, they had invited Anna, Wyatt Way, Lily Lou, and Clark Sterling over. The single slaughterhouse was about to host its first dinner party. He asked the driver to change course and head for the community market first. There was one near their Rainbow Terrace apartment complex. Once there, Leo navigated the aisles like a pro, picking up vegetables, pork ribs, a live fish, and fresh shrimp. He remembered Anna liked Coke chicken wings, so he bought the ingredients for that too. Finally, laden with bags, he headed back to his building. It was already getting dark by the time he entered the complex. He took the elevator up. When the doors opened on the 12th floor, Leo stepped out and saw a familiar figure in the hallway. Evelyn. In the public corridor, Evelyn Vance seemed to have just taken out her trash. She was standing by the wall, looking up at a notice that had been posted. Hearing Leo's call, she turned. Seeing her apprentice, she gave a casual wave. Just getting back? Then her eyes landed on the mountain of grocery bags in his hands. Wow, you bought a lot. What's the occasion? Planning a feast? Her foodie senses tingled, and she adopted a master's tone. You little brat. Planning a feast? And you don't even think to invite your mentor? Given their relationship, cooking a meal for his mentor was no big deal. But today wasn't convenient. The fact that in turn Leo Wallace was dating the heiress of Sterling Holdings had to remain a secret. Leo needed a tactful way to decline. He thought for a moment, then nodded. Sure, my wife's cooking tonight. Feel free to stop by if you have time. Evelyn froze. Your wife. An instant later, she remembered the handmade cookies his girlfriend had made once. Her stomach instinctively clenched. Evelyn's eyes widened in horror. You know what? On second thought, I think I'll pass. The formidable Evelyn Vance, a woman who, at the age of 3, would have fearlessly inspected a dog eating its own feces on the street, had just turned down an invitation for a free meal for the first time in her life. It was a new record. His goal achieved, Leo breathed a sigh of relief. Now relaxed, he curiously glanced at the notice on the wall that had captured his mentor's attention. What are you looking at, Evelyn? Evelyn answered casually, Oh, nothing. Someone in our building has a parrot, and lately it's been harassing every other bird in the neighborhood. I heard it's made a pass at every pretty female bird in this building and the one next door. I mean, what kind of owner raises a parrot to be such a degenerate? It's disgraceful. Evelyn said it with a sense of righteous indignation. This time, as Leo's eyes scanned the angry words on the notice, it was his turn to feel a jolt of horror. No idea, he stammered. Never met them. That damn bird is such an embarrassment. I'm going to discipline him when I get home. After a brief chat, the mentor and apprentice parted ways. Leo seemed to scurry off with his bags, looking rather guilty. Evelyn didn't think much of it. Realizing she was out of bottled water, she decided to head to the convenience store inside the complex. She took the elevator down. Just as she stepped out of the lobby, a young couple walked toward her. The man was tall and handsome, with the refined air of a young master. The woman was stunningly beautiful, so much so that it took your breath away. Even Evelyn's eyes widened slightly. Wow, what a good-looking and well-matched pair. She wanted to sneak another look. But as the couple reached the elevator, they began to strategize. You go up first? Okay, you wait 5 minutes, then come up. Their coordination was practiced as if they'd done this many times before. Evelyn was a little confused. What was that about? They had to take the elevator separately? Are good-looking people this secretive about dating these days? She shook her head, not dwelling on it, and continued out of the building. On her way to the convenience store, she saw another couple. The man had a gentle, kind face. The woman was graceful and elegant, with a serene presence. They too were a striking, well-matched pair. The man looked vaguely familiar, and as she got closer, Evelyn recognized him. Clark. Clark Sterling looked up, surprised to see the beautiful woman walking toward them. Evelyn. One was a team leader under the Sterling heiress, the other a soon-to-be member of that same team. Though they hadn't officially started working together, they had met before. Evelyn was surprised and curious. You live here too? Although this was a subsidized apartment complex for Sterling Holdings employees, she hadn't expected a member of the Sterling family to be living here. Clark smiled. No, a friend of mine lives here. I'm here for dinner. After explaining, he remembered his manners and turned to the woman beside him, introducing her with a smile. This is Evelyn Vance, a colleague from Sterling Holdings. She'll be on my team soon. Then he introduced her to Evelyn. And this is my girlfriend. Evelyn's gaze fell on her team leader's partner, and she extended her hand warmly. Hi, Evelyn Vance. The other woman smiled and shook her hand. Lily Lou. The two women, each with a distinct style and presence, shook hands and sized each other up. Both were impressed by the other's looks and charisma. But then, both of them frowned slightly. For some reason, they felt an inexplicable clash of auras. After a few polite words, they went their separate ways. Lily Lou and Clark Sterling continued into the complex. Lily couldn't help but glance back at her boyfriend's colleague. Clark noticed. What's wrong? Lily looked away and shook her head, feeling puzzled herself. Nothing. It's just a strange feeling. Why do I feel like I just met a natural enemy? She quickly dismissed it. The next second, she was pinching the soft flesh at her boyfriend's waist, half joking, half threatening. She's a very pretty colleague. When you start working together, no staring, you hear me? Clark winced and swore to the heavens. Of course not. I only have eyes for you. The couple laughed and joked as they entered the building. When they reached the elevator bank, they were surprised to see a certain heir of the Way family standing there, muttering to himself. 4 minutes, 39 seconds. 4 minutes, 40. 4 minutes, 41. Clark and Lily. What is he doing? Wyatt Way turned and saw them, jumping in surprise before breaking into a nervous laugh. Oh, you guys are here? What coincidence, I just got here too. The three of them rode the elevator up together. They arrived on the 12th floor and walked to apartment 1219, where a wooden sign read the Single Slaughterhouse. Pushing open the slightly ajar door, they were greeted by a scene of chaos. The man of the house was chasing a chubby parrot around the living room. Get back here, you little bastard. Don't you run. You've brought shame upon this entire household. Amidst the chaos, a certain Annie Cakes was cheering on the parrot with glee. "Run, reasonable run. I'll hold back Leo the pig for you." The apartment was in an uproar. Claire, wearing an apron like a master chef, walked out of the kitchen and greeted her 3 guests with a radiant smile. "You're here. I cooked tonight, too. You'll have to try some later." Lily Lou, Clark Sterling, and Wyatt Way. Is it too late to run? Daily call for boosts and gifts. 1 week of no porn. And responsibility for consuming all the cookies produced by Chef Sue's baking workshop for the entire week. With his punishment, Leo felt he had given his chubby parrot a stern lesson. Reasonable appeared to have humbly and painfully accepted his fate, but his little round eyes were still darting around, glinting mischievously. He clearly hadn't given up. So what if I have to eat a few cookies? Not even the sky falling can stop the great Reasonable from his romantic conquests. The chubby parrot was fearless in the pursuit of love. But some people were not. Tonight was the first official dinner party at the single slaughterhouse. The hosts had prepared an incredibly lavish meal. 6 dishes and a soup filled the entire dining table. The presentation was enticing, the aroma intoxicating. It was enough to make anyone's mouth water. Lily, Clark, Wyatt, and Anna were eager to dig in. But then they remembered what the lady of the house had said just moments before. They realized that among these 6 dishes and 1 soup, there was a creation by the one and only Bertha Sue. The chopsticks they had just picked up froze mid-air. They didn't dare make a move. Their eyes met, and they immediately put on faces of enthusiastic deference. "Go on. Annie Cakes, you first." No, Lily after you." "Wyatt, my man, how about you start?" "Oh, I couldn't possibly." "Clark, you should have the first bite." Unaware of their thoughts, Claire spoke with cheerful excitement. "Only one of the dishes is mine. I'll keep it a secret for now. Try them, and see who can guess which one it is." The 4 guests felt their hearts sink. Guess correctly? That's not a guess, that's a death sentence. Chef Sue's cooking skills had indeed improved recently. Not just her cookies, but even her actual dishes looked flawless. But that only made it more terrifying. When her food was obviously a biohazard, you could avoid it. How were they supposed to avoid it now? Claire was already urging them on. Under the chef's beaming gaze, the 4 of them could only steel themselves, pick up their chopsticks with trembling hands, and reach for the food with the grim determination of soldiers marching to their doom. What should have been a cozy dinner party had turned into a scene from a Hollywood thriller, complete with the tense atmosphere of Russian roulette. But after nervously trying a bite of every dish, they were shocked to find themselves perfectly fine. Leo, smiling from the side, explained that Chef Sue had once again called Mrs. Phone back in Northwood for remote guidance. The yam and pork rib soup she made today was actually quite good. They had escaped death. The 4 guests were moved to tears, their hands clasped together as they chanted in unison, "Praise be to Mrs. Phone." But the moment of relief was shattered when the newly praised Chef Sue, inspired, began to rise from her seat. "Oh, right, there's one more dish I made all by myself." The guests' faces turned pale with horror as they scrambled to stop her. They ate, drank, and chatted around the table, catching up on each other's lives. Most of them were busy with family matters or work. Lily and Anna gossiped, asking about Leo and Claire's dynamic at Sterling Holdings. The power couple remained cool and composed. "We're professionals. At the office, we naturally maintain our distance and focus on work." The statement nearly made Clark choke on his food, sending him into a violent coughing fit. Meanwhile, Lily heard something unexpected from Claire, and her eyes widened. "Happy Nest is in the same building as you. 1 floor above you." After Claire nodded, Lily couldn't help but turn to look at Leo, her expression unreadable. Leo's face remained impassive, but when no one was looking, he secretly made a keep quiet gesture to Lily. Just then, Anna spoke up excitedly. "Hey, isn't that CSO from Happy Nest super mysterious? Sis, since you work in the same building, does that mean you might get a chance to meet him?" Claire nodded, thinking about how her old man had used the Happy Nest CSO to put her boyfriend in his place. Her eyes narrowed. "Yes, there will be a chance." The butter knife in her hand unconsciously made a few slicing motions. A cold glint flashed. A palpable killing intent filled the air. Leo shivered and quickly shot another, more forceful, "Keep quiet" signal to Lily. Absolute secrecy. Lily stifled a laugh. Beside her, Clark looked at her with concern, but she just shook her head, still fighting back her amusement. This is actually pretty fun, she thought. So this is the joy of being in on the joke. After dinner, they moved to the sofa to continue drinking and talking, just as they used to at the L&S house. The single slaughterhouse wasn't as spacious, but the wraparound floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of East Bay's glittering city lights. The conversation returned to work. The topic shifted to Wyatt and Anna. Coincidentally, they both reported that their respective company projects were progressing smoothly and their products were about to launch. They were both thrilled. Anna was excited about getting a vacation and a hefty bonus after the project's success. But Wyatt's happiness was a bit strange. Everyone looked at him with confusion, including Anna. The heir of the Way family maintained a righteous expression. "I'm happy for my employees. I'm just so happy I get to give them bonuses." Lily and Clark were genuinely impressed. It was rare to see such a conscientious boss. As a fellow boss, Leo just stared at Wyatt, puzzled. Is this guy crazy? As the night deepened, the guests at the single slaughterhouse began to leave. The evening had been full of good food, drinks, and conversation. As she was leaving, Lily was still a bit reluctant for it to end. "Well, we're all in the city. We should do these couples get-togethers more often." Leo, Claire, and Clark all nodded in agreement. But Anna was quick to react, instantly on high alert. "Wait a minute. What couples get together? You two pairs are couples, but the rest of us are single, okay? Right, Wyatt?" She stomped hard on the foot of Wyatt, who was lost in thought. The Way family air sucked in a sharp breath. Finally snapping back to reality, he winced and nodded vigorously. Right. Annie Cakes and I are both single." Seeing Wyatt's pained expression, Leo and Clark couldn't help but feel a phantom pain in their own feet. Claire and Lily, however, looked at Wyatt and Anna with thoughtful expressions. They exchanged a look, and a knowing smile spread across both their faces. They said their goodbyes at the door of apartment 1219. They were about to chat a bit longer when Claire remembered something. "Oh, right, I have some leftover cookies from the other day. Do you want to take some home?" In the next second, Wyatt, Anna, Clark, and Lily bolted, disappearing down the hall in a flash. Evelyn Vance loved cookies. The last batch, made by her apprentice's girlfriend, had nearly sent her to an early grave and left her recovering for 3 days. But that hadn't dampened her enthusiasm for baked goods. It was Saturday night. Home alone, Evelyn pulled out the handmade cookies that little Miss Sue had given her. She planned to enjoy the delicious treats while catching up on some work, finishing a few remaining reports. She took out the sealed plastic container and admired the cookies under the light. She couldn't help but shake her head in admiration. As expected of little Miss Sue, not only was she beautiful and brilliant, but her baking skills were also exceptional. The last cookies she'd had nearly killed her. This time, she would savor little Miss Sue's creations and properly heal from that traumatic experience. She picked up a cookie and opened a financial report. Just as she was about to bring the cookie to her lips, her hand froze. Her eyes were fixed on the report. Her brow furrowed once again. It was late January, with the new year just around the corner. A festive atmosphere was beginning to build, but the air in East Bay was growing colder, the chill more biting. The winter this year felt particularly harsh. As the new week began, an unexpected wave of house cleaning swept through Sterling Holdings. It came as a shock, primarily targeting the various departments outside the main business division. At the Monday headquarters meeting, Mr. Young, the current head of the business division, arrived from the Global Financial Center to the 36th floor conference room of the Sterling Holdings Tower. Under the stunned gazes of the other department heads, he rose and announced that his division had been conducting a review of the financial reports from all sister departments. He stated, without a change in expression, that the review had been ongoing for half a month and had already yielded some results. He intended to present those findings today. After his announcement, however, Mr. Young calmly sat back down, much to everyone's confusion. A low murmur of suspicion filled the room. Then, the conference room doors opened again. A sharp, authoritative click of high heels preceded the entrance of Claire Sterling. Dressed in a chic business suit, she strode in, her presence so commanding and her beauty so striking that it was almost overwhelming. The sheer force of her aura made nearly 100 mid to high-level managers around the long conference table instinctively rise to their feet. Little Miss Sue, Charles Sterling, the chairman, who had been sitting at the head of the table, maintained a calm expression but subtly shifted his chair to the side. And so, the heiress of Sterling Holdings calmly and naturally took her seat at the head of the table. Lifting her gaze, Claire's eyes swept across the assembled leaders of Sterling Holdings. Last April, I audited the Southwest branch on behalf of the chairman. Those of you here either experienced it or at least heard about it. A country has its laws, a family has its rules. Sterling Holdings has its own bottom line. As long as you don't cross that line, we're fine. But for those who have, I suggest you think back to what happened in the Southwest last year. "In my eyes," she said, her voice cool and clear, "there is no room for compromise." Each word, though spoken calmly, carried the sharp chill of a razor's edge. Those in the room, with guilty consciences, felt their faces pale. Some even felt their legs tremble, barely able to stay seated. Not giving anyone a chance to argue or beg for mercy, Claire picked up a stack of documents. She looked at them without raising her head, her tone casual. "Next, I will read a list of names. Those who are to be disciplined will be disciplined. Those who are to be fired can go back and pack your things. Have your resignation letters on the HR department's desk by tonight." The future queen of Sterling Holdings paused. She looked up at the executives before her and smiled faintly. "Or," she added, "you can wait for me to do it for you." At that moment, the heiress of Sterling Holdings was smiling. But the vast 36-floor conference room had fallen deathly silent. With the new year so close, no one at Sterling Holdings had expected the purge to be so swift and brutal. Brutal and merciless. In the 2 short days following the Monday meeting, 11 departments at headquarters were visited by members of the internal audit team. The investigation involved 25 teams, 18 offices, and over 100 mid-level and senior employees. The highest-ranking individuals implicated were 2 deputy department heads and 1 department head. The punishments were severe. The worst offenders weren't just fired. They were reported to the police for criminal investigation. Those with supervisory negligence or complicity also received penalties ranging from reprimands to probation. Sterling Holdings was undergoing a massive cleanse. The entire corporation was in an uproar. Some applauded the move, while others watched with unease. The methods were seen as too harsh, too unforgiving, too domineering. It sparked a wave of dissent and accusations. With a little nudging from interested parties, the criticism was aimed directly at the mastermind of the purge, the next leader of Sterling Holdings. The Sterling heiress is young and trying to establish her authority through force. She's too impatient. She doesn't understand the struggles of her employees. How can such methods win anyone over? Last April, her audit of the Southwest branch had earned her widespread praise. But this time, the interests of many powerful factions within the corporation were at stake. When their own interests were threatened, those who had once admired her became her fiercest critics. The dissent grew, snowballing until it was nearly a full-blown rebellion. A corporate vice president and 2 veteran board members, leading a group of implicated employees, stormed up to the 37th floor. Taking a deep breath, they pushed open the door to the chairman's office. They passionately pleaded their case, trying to persuade the chairman to yield to popular opinion and put a stop to his daughter's reckless actions. From behind his desk, the chairman of Sterling Holdings looked up. His gaze swept over the faces of these long-serving veterans. He just smiled calmly. "I understand." The next day, the vice president was demoted 5 ranks. The 2 veteran members were removed from the board. The 17 employees who had participated in the confrontation were all fired after evidence of their corruption was verified. They were told to pack their bags and leave. The entire corporation was shaken to its core. As the storm raged through Sterling Holdings headquarters, all was calm 57 floors up in the business division at the Global Financial Center. In the office of the market team supervisor, Claire Sterling sat at her desk, addressing her subordinates. Her voice remained as cool and composed as ever. "You've all done very well recently. But this war isn't over. Keep digging. Leave no one behind." The team members standing before her had been working tirelessly, their eyes red from staring at data. They were under immense pressure, physically exhausted, but mentally energized. Hearing her command, they responded with a thunderous yes. Only Clark Sterling remained calm, reminding her in a low voice, "Supervisor, if we keep digging, we'll be digging into the Sterling family itself." The office fell silent. Claire's expression didn't change. She looked up at her cousin and asked flatly, "The Sterling family. Are you afraid to investigate them?" Clark took a deep breath and nodded firmly. "No." In the main office area of the business division, Evelyn Vance stared at the project report she'd been looking at for 2 days, her brow furrowed in a deep frown, as if she were wrestling with a difficult decision. A certain intern, Leo Wallace, strolled over leisurely. "Evelyn, what are we eating today? Where are we going for a fieldwork today?" Evelyn took a deep breath, trying to calm herself, and shook her head. "I'm going alone this time. You stay here." As she spoke, she stood up from her desk, as if she had made up her mind. For ordinary project audits, it was fine to bring the kid along to show him the ropes. But this time was different. The last few financial reports she had left to review involved the direct line of the Sterling family. This was about to blow the lid off something huge. So, she would handle it alone. In the city's central business district, at the Queen's Bar. Sarah Lynn and Chloe Choi, who had just passed their interviews and landed jobs as waitresses, were in the employee break room, excitedly examining their beautiful new uniforms. Chloe leaned in to share some gossip with her best friend. "Sarah, I just heard from the other staff. Not only is the pay great here, but this place is seriously well-funded. They say the big boss behind it is a young master from the Sterling family. Daily call for boosts and gifts." Many within Sterling Holdings cheered for the recent purge, but even more remained neutral, watching from the sidelines with a critical eye. To them, the method seemed too severe, too unforgiving. No matter how it was explained, it smacked of the young heiress clearing out dissenters to consolidate her own power for the future. She had gotten rid of so many mid to high-level managers in one fell swoop. It looked decisive, but many of them were competent employees. Couldn't their contributions offset some of their mistakes? The most crucial point was this. The purge had taken down many veterans who had been with the company since its founding for over a decade. But not a single one of Sterling's own relatives or core family members had been touched. If this was a true house cleaning, did the young heiress not dare to apply the same standards to her own family? If she showed favoritism to her relatives, Sterling Holdings would just be another family business. What would that say to the other employees? But on the other hand, the Sterling family was the true foundation of the chairman and his daughter's power, bound by blood. They were their most steadfast supporters. If, for the sake of so-called fairness, she investigated and punished her own family with the same severity, she risked losing their support. How could she hope to maintain a firm grip on the company then? You're damned if you do, and damned if you don't. Either way, it's the wrong move. An old-timer in the company who had seen it all shook his head and remarked to the employees around him, "This time, little Miss Sue has backed herself into a corner. She's riding a tiger and can't get off." As these rumors spread quietly through the company, even reaching the 57th floor of the Global Financial Center, the office of the business division's market team supervisor remained an oasis of calm. Claire Sterling, seated at her desk, seemed completely unfazed. Her expression was serene. Listening to her team members' carefully worded reminders and expressions of concern, the future head of Sterling Holdings simply smiled. The Sterling family, the company's decorated veterans, it doesn't matter. Sterling Holdings has thousands of employees. One more or one less of them makes no difference. What I want is a Sterling Holdings that is united, a single cohesive force. This ship has had one captain in the past, and it will only need one in the future. The captain doesn't need to be loved or adored. They only need to be obeyed. When I move forward, they follow. Her tone was as plain as if she were stating the obvious, but each word landed with the force of a hammer blow on the eardrums of every elite team member in the room. A lifetime apart, the returning queen of Sterling Holdings was finally reclaiming the authority and presence she had wielded in her previous life. Her methods were like lightning, and her natural, powerful dominance was enough to make the blood of the young elites in the room boil with excitement. Claire looked up from her documents, her gaze sweeping over her team. "So, keep digging, no matter who it is. Anyone who violates company regulations will be dealt with accordingly." The team responded with a resounding yes. All hesitation was gone. In fact, things progressed much more smoothly than most had feared. When the audit reached the direct line of the Sterling family within the company, there was indeed resistance from some of the family elders. Some, like the older generation of Sterling relatives, flew into a rage when summoned for questioning. "I'm Charles's sixth uncle," one of them roared, slamming his fists on the desk. "I'm your great uncle. I built this company. On what grounds are you investigating me?" When the situation reached a stalemate and the audit team was at a loss, a cool, elegant figure entered the room, heralded by the click of high heels. "Any objections," she said, "you can discuss with me." 20 minutes later, the Sterling family's great-uncle personally delivered his resignation to the HR department, accompanied by an 800-word, heartfelt confession. Word spread through the company that little Miss Sue had made a statement in her office. The Sterling family will lead by example. For those who don't want to leave with dignity, I will help them find it. Her words were filled with a spirit of compassionate understanding. After that, the cooperation from the Sterling family in the investigation increased dramatically. Within 2 days, 13 mid to high-level managers from the Sterling family, including 2 board members, were removed from their positions. The company was shaken once again. Thousands of employees were left speechless, remembering the Southwest audit from last April and connecting it to the current storm. They couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. In terms of decisiveness and skill, little Miss Sue seemed to have surpassed even her father, the chairman. Though she hadn't officially joined Claire's team yet, Evelyn Vance had heard all about her new boss's recent accomplishments. Discovering that Claire had even investigated her own family filled Evelyn with excitement. Even so, she was determined to handle the last few financial reports on her own. Little Miss Sue had dealt with the difficult older generations of the family. As her subordinate, Evelyn had to do her part and independently resolve the issues with the third-generation Sterlings. She had made up her mind, but she never expected her work to go so smoothly. She had planned to go alone, but when she arrived at the subsidiary's building, she saw a familiar figure. "What are you doing here?" Evelyn stared, dumbfounded, at her apprentice, who had appeared out of nowhere. "Didn't I tell you to stay at the office?" Intern Leo Wallace looked righteous. "You're my mentor. Isn't it perfectly reasonable for me to accompany you on fieldwork?" "Reasonable my ass. This is dangerous. This kid really doesn't get it." Evelyn sighed in resignation. But since he was already here, she let him tag along. Before they went upstairs, she gave him a stern warning. "The people we're meeting today are not to be messed with. You know the Sterling family, right? These are little Miss Sue's relatives. Spencer Sterling, Sloane Sterling. They're her cousins. When we go up there, don't say a single word. If you get into trouble, no one can save you." Leo nodded earnestly. "Don't worry, I'll just watch. I promise I won't say a thing." And he kept his promise. He followed his mentor upstairs and stood silently in the corner like a piece of furniture the entire time. But that was enough. Spencer and Sloane Sterling, the third-generation heirs, had already heard from their elders about the recent upheaval at the company. They knew they were in for it. But when faced with just an ordinary employee from the business division, they had initially planned to pull rank. They cleared their throats, ready to put on their arrogant Sterling family airs for Evelyn. But the next second, their eyes widened in shock as they saw the intern standing behind her, Spencer and Sloane. When Evelyn carefully chose her words and cautiously requested to review the discrepancies in their reports, the two normally haughty third-generation Sterlings nodded furiously. "Yes, of course. We'll get you the missing data right away. It's our fault. You shouldn't have had to make the trip. We'll deliver it personally." Their attitude was so cooperative, so eager. It was almost fawning. It left Evelyn completely baffled. She waved her hands. No, I can just pick it up." The two Sterling cousins wiped sweat from their brows. "No, we'll deliver it. We will. We have to cooperate. Didn't you see that terrifying guy in the back take out his death note?" In the end, the mission was a resounding success. As Evelyn left the subsidiary, she was still in a daze, utterly confused. "Wait, what just happened? It's over." Beside her, intern Leo Wallace gave her a clueless thumbs up. "Evelyn, we make a great team." Evelyn rolled her eyes. "It was me who did all the work, okay?" She quickly shook off her confusion. With the job done, she was in high spirits. She waved a hand magnanimously. "Let's go. Dinner at the Spicy Spoon, my treat." In an apartment building in the Futile district of East Bay, 3 entire floors were dedicated to employee housing for the Queen's Bar, a bar located in the heart of the Jing'an district, backed by significant wealth and influence. Its high salaries were a major draw, but the employee benefits were what attracted a host of handsome men and beautiful women to apply. The dorms weren't large. A small, 20-square-meter room held 2 beds. But for best friends like Sarah Lynn and Chloe Choi, the double room was perfect. And it was right in the city. Besides their shifts at the bar, which started at 6:30 p.m., they had all day to sleep in. If they woke up early enough, they could spend the afternoon exploring East Bay's many sights. After just a few days of working at Queen's, both Sarah and Chloe were extremely satisfied with their jobs. The pay was good, the work wasn't too demanding, and although the night shifts were tiring, the bar itself was a high-end, glamorous environment. The dazzling lights, the sea of attractive people, and the well-dressed, upper-class clientele, it fulfilled all their fantasies of big city life. It was now 6 p.m., half an hour before they had to clock in. In their dorm room, the two friends sat at their vanity, carefully applying their makeup. Queen's employed about 20 or 30 waitresses like them, working in 2 shifts. The bar paid well, but it also had high standards for its employees' appearance and demeanor. The dress code was strict. Uniform, flawless makeup, stockings, and high heels. Chloe had barely made the cut. Even Sarah, the former beauty of Class 7 at Northwood High, who had become even more stunning after learning to do her makeup in college, had at least 5 or 6 colleagues at Queen's who were just as beautiful. Chloe finished her makeup first. After a quick look in the mirror, she sighed and tossed her eyebrow pencil aside. "I'm done. This is as good as it's going to get." Sarah, who was meticulously drawing her eyebrows, heard her friend's complaint and replied with a smile. "You're just lazy. You don't practice enough, so you're not good at it. Let me finish, and I'll help you." A few moments later, Sarah had finished her own makeup, adding a final touch of lipstick. Chloe leaned in for a look, and her eyes lit up. Beautiful. You look amazing, Sarah. You'll definitely outshine all the other pretty girls at the bar. If you were back at school, you'd easily be the campus queen, even compared to that Claire Sterling for back then. You're not that far off. She had wanted to lay the praise on thicker, but when she mentioned the untouchable ice queen of their high school, Chloe couldn't help but hesitate. Sarah paused at the mention of the name, then smiled wryly. I'm still a long way from her. One's perspective changes with age. In high school, looking at the cool campus beauty was like a frog in a well gazing at the moon. In college, she realized it was more like a mayfly beholding the vast sky. She had yet to see anyone at her university, a place full of beautiful women, who could rival the kind of ethereal grace and presence. Now, she no longer had any desire to compete. Chloe sighed, then remembered something. By the way, are she and that Leo Wallace still together? I still don't get what Claire sees in him. She grumbled. Sarah shook her head gently. They should be. Leo is actually a great guy. The two of them, they're a perfect match. There was a complex mix of wistfulness and admiration in her voice. Over a year had passed since they left their alma mater, but news still traveled through the high school alumni group chats. The most frequently discussed topic was that couple. They were named honorary alumni of Northwood High. They returned to give motivational speeches to the seniors. Last winter, they organized a charity bake sale for the Southern Snowstorm disaster relief. There was even a rumor that the East Bay Police Department had sent a commendation banner to the school, thanking the two outstanding Northwood graduates for their bravery in capturing a fugitive on a train. In story after story, the two of them were always together, as if inseparable. Unwittingly, they had become the most legendary couple in Northwood High's history. The tales of their shared experiences were enough to inspire awe and admiration in anyone who heard them. Sarah was no exception. Chloe felt a mix of admiration and envy, but she couldn't help but mutter, I still don't like him. That Leo Wallace called me a 1 out of 10 back then. And that story about catching a fugitive on a train. Who knows if it was just luck? If he's so great, let's see him do it again. Sarah found her friends pouting amusing. An encounter like that is terrifying enough once. What do you think he is? A magnet for trouble. Then, as if a thought struck her, the former class beauty sighed softly. They are both incredible. Back then, I was the one in the wrong. I made mistakes, and I deserve the consequences. Seeing her friend's spirits drop, Chloe quickly tried to comfort her, changing the subject. Hey, it's been so long. Why are you still thinking about that? They have their lives, we have ours. There are plenty of good men in the world, not just Leo Wallace. Hey, we see lots of handsome guys at the bar. And what about the big boss? Isn't he supposed to be some rich young master from the Sterling family? If you ever get a chance to meet him, he'll definitely fall for you in an instant. She said it with conviction. Then her expression turned dreamy. This has to be one of the most high-end bars in East Bay, right? We've been working here for days, but we've never had the chance to experience it as customers. Sarah's mood had lifted. Hearing her friend, she smiled. Okay, when we get paid, my treat. We'll be customers for a night and have a few drinks. Chloe's face lit up. Deal. We'll order that special cocktail. The one they set on fire. I've seen the customers drink it. They look so cool. We'll be sophisticated for a night, too. As she spoke, Chloe picked up a water glass from the table and vividly mimicked a customer tasting wine. Come on, let's practice. Cheers. Sarah laughed and picked up her own glass, clinking it against Chloe's. Cheers. The glasses clinked together. At the spicy spoon, Evelyn Vance drained her beer in one go. She let out a very unladylike burp and patted her stomach with satisfaction. Ah, that's the stuff. She couldn't believe how smoothly her fieldwork had gone today. The third-generation Sterlings weren't arrogant or domineering at all. They were polite and respectful, treating her like she was their own grandmother. It was truly unbelievable. Unsure of the reason, Evelyn happily attributed it to her own powerful aura, which must have inspired awe. She didn't forget to smugly lecture her apprentice. Watch and learn. Not everyone has my skills. Across from her, intern Leo Wallace, who was busy shoveling food into his mouth, managed to look up and give her a thumbs up. You're the best, Evelyn. Evelyn preened and took another sip of beer. She was in a great mood. Now, almost all the reports on her desk were done. There was only one left, and she figured it wouldn't be too difficult. Leo asked curiously, which one is left? Evelyn replied, casually, it's for the Juinha Investment Department. Oh, it's another Sterling. He's the deputy head of the investment department at the Juinha subsidiary. What's his name? Graham Sterling. To the high school seniors who just finished their final exams, have a great summer. Remember to boost and send gifts. The name Graham Sterling sounded vaguely familiar to Leo. He pulled out his little gratitude journal and flipped through the pages. Then he remembered. A third-generation Sterling, the grandson of his wife's third great-uncle. He was a deputy manager in the investment department of a Sterling Holdings subsidiary. He had used his family connections and his grandfather's influence to produce some decent-looking results. He was also the most arrogant and self-important person Leo had met at his first Sterling family gathering. He even had a hacked account for the Battle Through the Heavens browser game, which Leo had promptly banned. He wasn't a team player, either. He had skipped the karaoke night with the other young Sterlings. In summary, he was at the top of the little notebook's blacklist. Evelyn was curious about Leo's notebook. "What's this? You even wrote down the Sterling heir's name?" Leo nodded without changing his expression. "Yeah, my memory isn't great, so I write things down to do my homework. Better to be prepared. Mainly, I'm afraid of forgetting any enemies. It would make settling scores later inconvenient." His explanation didn't arouse Evelyn's suspicion. In fact, she nodded in approval. "Well, diligence can make up for a lack of talent. You might be a little dumb, kid, but you have your merits." After mentoring him for over half a month, seeing the kid gradually mature, Evelyn felt a sense of pride. She then thought about how, once she finished this last report on Graham Sterling, she would be reporting for duty on Little Miss Sue's team in the 3rd Business Division. The time for mentor and apprentice to part ways was approaching. Evelyn felt a pang of regret and sadness. Her gaze softened as she looked at Leo. "Kid, you'll have to rely on yourself from now on. Your mentor can't protect you forever." Before Leo could ask any questions, Evelyn shook her head, pushing aside her emotions. She then smiled brightly. "Let's not talk about that. You've worked hard with me recently. Tonight, order whatever you want. It's on your big sister." Evelyn decided to replace the sorrow of parting with bravado. Leo nodded happily, then picked up the menu and called out to the waiter. "Sir, we'll have everything on the menu, please." Evelyn, her magnanimous, mentorly air vanished. She snatched the menu away, fuming. "You little brat, I said order whatever you want, not order me into bankruptcy. My entire month's salary wouldn't cover that." The next morning, it was business as usual at the Sterling Holdings Business Division. Evelyn went to the office of the market team supervisor in the 3rd Business Division again. She met with Little Miss Sue. Seated behind her desk, the future queen of Sterling Holdings was as coolly beautiful as ever. After the recent corporate purge, which she had orchestrated, her aura of cold authority had become even more pronounced, making it hard to breathe in her presence. Evelyn composed herself and respectfully reported on the progress of her work, stating that she would finish the last report by the end of the week and could then officially join the team. Claire nodded slightly, as Evelyn explained her recent work, especially when she mentioned that even Spencer and Sloane Sterling had obediently accepted their punishments. A small smile touched Claire's lips. "Good work." Hearing the praise, Evelyn felt a wave of relief. Taking advantage of her new boss's good mood, she hesitated for a moment before carefully choosing her words. "Little Miss Sue, there's one more thing. I recently took on an intern, and I've only been training him for half a month. If I join your team, he'll be a newcomer with no one to guide him. I'm worried he won't be able to adjust. So, would it be possible for me to continue mentoring him?" "Don't worry. I promise it won't interfere with any of your assignments," she added quickly, practically swearing an oath. Claire raised an eyebrow. An intern? She understood immediately. Sterling Holdings had a long-standing tradition of mentorship, with senior employees paired one-on-one with newcomers. Given Evelyn's responsible nature, it wasn't surprising that she was worried about her apprentice. Intrigued, Claire asked a few questions about the intern. Speaking of her apprentice, a smile appeared on Evelyn's face. "That kid, he's a handful. He can be lazy at times, but he's always the first in line for lunch. But he's a good person and very smart. With enough time to grow, he'll definitely become a valuable asset to Sterling Holdings." Her tone was filled with a mentor's pride and protectiveness. Claire nodded. He sounded like an interesting newcomer. A lot like her own silly little boyfriend, actually. She trusted the judgment of the woman who had been her most capable subordinate in her previous life and was willing to grant her this favor. She made her decision. "All right, when you've finished your handover, you can bring your little apprentice with you when you report to the team." Part of it was her trust in Evelyn's eye for talent. The other part was that her own little boyfriend was also an intern. If she brought in Evelyn's apprentice first, it would be perfectly reasonable to hire another one later, intern Leo Wallace. 2 interns could keep each other company. Claire was satisfied with her plan. When Evelyn returned to the main office area, she was beaming with pride. She called her apprentice over. She adopted a grand, mentorly tone. "You lucky brat. Having a great mentor like me means when one person succeeds, everyone around them benefits. You're about to leap over the dragon's gate. Leo was completely bewildered. Evelyn wouldn't explain, simply crossing her legs with an air of importance. You'll see. Now get back to work. Your mentor has to finish this last report. She waved him away like a fly. Sitting at her own desk, Evelyn took out the box of cookies Little Miss Sue had given her. She hadn't had a chance to eat them last time. Now, she could snack while she worked. Perfect. She placed the cookie box on her desk. She expertly opened her computer and began cross-referencing the financial report with the company's internal database. Junha's subsidiary, investment department. Approver, Deputy Manager Graham Sterling. She set the filters and began her search. A list of transactions from the past 2 months quickly populated the screen. Just as she was about to pop a cookie into her mouth, her hand froze again. She stared at the entries on the screen. In just 2 months, Graham Sterling had approved a total of 14 Sterling Holdings bidding projects. Some were for a few million. The largest were for over 10 million. Together, the total value exceeded 9 figures. They were awarded to a total of 7 different companies. Evelyn's brow furrowed instinctively. Sensing something was wrong, she quickly switched browser tabs and ran a new search based on the details she had just found. As she unraveled the connections and uncovered the true owners behind the 7 companies, all threads led to the same surname, Crestview. In the market team supervisor's office in the 3rd Business Division, Clark Sterling rushed in, holding a stack of documents. Claire looked up from her desk. Found another Sterling? Clark nodded, then shook his head, his expression grim. It's complicated. You should take a look at this first. He handed over the documents. Claire took them. The words on the first page were all too familiar. Fenwood Old District Redevelopment Project. Contractor, Aegis Construction. Claire paused, looking at Clark again. This matter, I thought we had already resolved it. Clark nodded. Aegis was dealt with. But during the recent comprehensive audit of all group projects, we re-examined this one and found that things weren't so simple. Behind Aegis, there's someone else. Claire's eyes narrowed. She flipped to the next page. A string of bold words jumped out at her. The Crestview Group. In the open plan office of the Sterling Business Division, Evelyn Vance's expression had turned grave as she stared at her computer screen. When she had first reviewed this financial report, she had only noticed that many project figures were missing and that there were clear signs of manual alteration, creating inconsistencies. At the time, while she had spotted the problem, she hadn't thought too deeply about it. Based on her previous investigations, she assumed it was just another case of a Sterling heir using their connections to pull some strings, skimming a little off the top for personal gain. At worst, it would be like Spencer and Sloane's situation, a discrepancy of a few tens or hundreds of thousands. They would admit their mistake, accept the penalty, pay back the difference, and the financial records would be corrected. But this was different. Graham Sterling's position in the Sterling Holdings subsidiary was higher than that of the other third-generation heirs. As the deputy manager of the investment department, he had greater authority. He had approved 14 projects in one go, with a total value exceeding $100 million. This was technically within his authority. But when she looked closer, all 14 bids, which appeared to have been awarded to 7 different companies, were actually a sham. All 7 were shell companies. The ultimate controlling person or legal representative, though listed under different names, all belonged to the Crestview family. In other words, the mastermind behind Crestview had used Graham Sterling's position to carve out a $100 million slice of the pie from Sterling Holdings. If it were a legitimate company and a proper partnership, why the secrecy? Why the need to tamper with financial records? And if it was an abuse of power for personal gain? As the thoughts raced through her mind, Evelyn's face paled. If all 14 of these projects fail, and this gets out, what kind of impact and damage would the company's profits and reputation suffer? In the supervisor's office of the 3rd Business Division, Claire's face was now a mask of cold fury. Her eyes, fixed on the document in her hand, glinted with icy light. She had been careless. She hadn't realized Aegis Construction was just a front. The true culprit was the Crestview Group. They had used the Old District Redevelopment Project 1 from Sterling Holdings to greedily line their own pockets. They had not only almost left the residents of the Old District homeless, but had also nearly ruined Sterling Holdings' reputation. The Crestview family of East Bay. Claire had heard the name, but in her previous life, she only had a vague impression of them. They had originally developed in East Bay, but later seemed to have shifted their focus to the capital, having little interaction with the Sterling Holdings she had led. In this life, however, they had dared to provoke her. Aegis Construction, on its own merits, should never have won the bid from Sterling Holdings. Even the Crestview family didn't have that much clout. This meant someone inside Sterling Holdings had to have pulled the strings, opening the door for them. Claire's gaze fell on the approver's signature at the bottom right of the document. The former deputy general manager of the Sterling marketing department, current consultant to the marketing department, Sherman Sterling. The clan uncle of the current chairman, Charles Sterling. The grandfather of the third-generation heir, Graham Sterling. And the one who had been the most vocal in the family's push for Claire's arranged marriage. Also, one of the top names on her little revenge list, her dear third great-uncle. The future queen of Sterling Holdings tapped her long, slender finger on Sherman Sterling's signature. The soft tapping sound echoed in the quiet office. To Clark, standing beside her, it sounded like a death knell. Then he heard his cousin speak calmly. Investigate. As noon approached, intern Leo Wallace cheerfully walked over to his mentor's desk in the open plan office. Evelyn, time for lunch. As an apprentice, it was his duty to invite his mentor to eat. More importantly, with Evelyn around, he could easily get his hands on the most popular dishes in the cafeteria. On any other day, at the mere mention of the word eat, Evelyn would have already shot up from her seat. But today was different. Her eyes were glued to the financial data on her screen, her brow furrowed. She waved her hand dismissively at her apprentice's invitation. You go ahead. I've got work to do. Her tone was uncharacteristically serious. Leo raised an eyebrow and asked what was wrong. Evelyn briefly explained the situation, turning her computer screen towards him so he could see for himself. Looking at the search results and the signed approvals, Leo's eyes narrowed slightly. He murmured thoughtfully, Graham Sterling, the Crestview family. Some pieces were quickly falling into place, leading to certain conclusions. Evelyn waved her hand distractedly. All right, you wouldn't understand this anyway. Go eat. I'll handle it. She didn't think her apprentice could be of any help in this matter. She waved him away, intending to get back to work, foregoing lunch for now. Evelyn. Her apprentice hadn't left. His concerned voice called out again. Evelyn's heart warmed, and her tone softened. It's okay. Don't worry about me. I know what I'm doing. But the next moment, she heard intern Leo Wallace ask curiously, Oh, I was just wondering where you got these cookies. Evelyn, the warmth in her heart instantly turned to ice. She angrily grabbed a cookie and shoved it into his hand. If you want one, just say so. Take it and get out. The ungrateful brat. I thought he was worried about me, but he was just after little Miss Sue's cookies. I haven't even had one yet, and he gets to have it. After her apprentice left, Evelyn turned her attention back to her computer screen. She thought for a moment and made a decision. She picked up her phone, found the number for Graham Sterling, the deputy manager of the Junha Investment Department, from the internal directory, and made the call. Ring, ring, ring. The call connected. A young, arrogant voice came through the line. Hello. Evelyn composed herself and spoke carefully. Mr. Graham Sterling? Hello, this is Evelyn Vance from the Corporate Business Division. I'd like to confirm some details regarding the recent 10-plus project bid approvals from the Junha subsidiary. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then, an annoyed, impatient voice snapped. What confirmation? I'm busy. I don't have time to talk to you about this. Before Evelyn could react, he hung up. But in that angry tone, there seemed to be a hint of panic and urgency. The line went dead. Evelyn stood there for a moment, stunned. Then, her expression hardened with determination. There was definitely something wrong. If he wouldn't talk on the phone, she would go talk to him in person. Leo, holding the cookie, was about to head down to the public cafeteria for lunch. As he walked, he looked at the cookie in his hand, a strange sense of familiarity washing over him. He was still hesitating whether to try it when another employee from the business division passed by and berated him. Hey, newbie, don't you know to greet your seniors? Where'd you get the cookie? Looks pretty good. Without another word, the employee snatched the cookie from his hand. Let me try it. He popped the cookie into his mouth, chewed twice, swallowed, and nodded in satisfaction. Not bad. Then he swaggered off. Leo watched him go, then pulled out his little notebook. Stole my cookie. This grudge has been recorded. Just as he was about to write, his phone rang. The caller ID showed it was the recently acquainted police commissioner, Evan Grant. Leo answered with a smile. Commissioner? Evan Grant's hearty laughter boomed through the phone. He was calling to invite Leo for another meeting, just the two of them, partly for business related to the public information platform, and partly personal. He had some free time and wanted to build their rapport. Leo smiled back. Sure, I'll find a place and let you know. Daily call for boosts and gifts. Leo ate lunch alone in the Global Center's public cafeteria. Without his mentor to run interference, intern Leo Wallace truly understood what it meant to be stuck in a crowd. He could barely move an inch in the packed line for food. By the time he finally reached the counter, the most popular dishes, the braised pork ribs and pan-fried shrimp, were long gone. Not even a single shrimp shell remained. Leo stared in disbelief. Carrying his tray of cold, soupy vegetables to a table, he couldn't help but sigh. The cafeteria was a battlefield. The fighting spirit of corporate drones was on a completely different level from university students. If Lily Lou were here, she wouldn't even get a scrap of leftover rice, let alone a hot meal. He had just found an empty seat and was about to resign himself to his meager lunch when two Happy Nest employees carrying trays walked over. Their eyes lit up when they saw their CSO. After a quick look around, they eagerly slid into the seats beside him. "Mr. Wallace, mind if we squeeze in and eat with you?" The moment they sat down, they saw the sad-looking vegetables on his tray and were aghast. "Is this all you're eating? That's not right. Here, have some of ours." With generous bravado, they piled portions of their own stir-fried meat and chicken legs onto his plate. "My own employees are the best," Leo thought, touched. He still made a show of protesting. No, you don't have to. You guys eat, I'm fine. Hey, can I have another one of those chicken legs? And some of those ribs." Whoa, you managed to get the pan-fried shrimp. After a round of humble refusals, his tray was now graced with 2 chicken legs, a pile of pan-fried shrimp, and a hearty portion of pork ribs. The chief strategy officer of Happy Nest, concerned for the health of his subordinates, urged them to eat more greens for a balanced diet and generously shared his 2 plates of vegetables with them. The 2 employees were moved to tears by his magnanimity. That was more like it. These 2 were sharp. Their own meals had been completely plundered by their CSO, but they didn't mind one bit. They even eagerly offered to get him more food. There were other Happy Nest employees at the next table. They could just take theirs. The more Leo looked at these 2, the more he liked them. They knew how to play the game. Much better than those idiots who had booed him and ended up on toilet duty. He recognized them. They were elite members of the Happy Nest Tech Department, veterans who had joined back in May or June of last year. Their skills were top-notch. He'd heard they even did some hacking on the side before they were hired. True tech talents. After joining, they were tasked with maintaining the website's backend, a job they could do with their eyes closed. Their greatest achievement was helping their male colleagues crack the world's largest paid porn study website, and then distributing over 20 premium VIP accounts to their brothers in arms. They were completely useless for any actual work. The chief strategy officer had given them a stern lecture at the time and confiscated one of the VIP accounts. But they were undeniably talented. It was a waste to let such skilled individuals sit idle. And right now, they could be very useful. Leo thought for a moment, then took out his notebook. "By the way, I need you 2 to look into something for me." He quickly scribbled a series of names and information on a page, tore it out, and handed it to them. The 2 tech experts took the paper and huddled over it. Jiunha Company. Bidding project. There's also a list of 7 related companies and 3 or 4 names with the surname Crestview. His request to eat a cookie earlier had just been an excuse. While his mentor was distracted, he had already memorized most of the information on her computer screen. The 2 tech guys looked up at their CSO. "What is this?" Leo remained nonchalant. "Don't worry about it. Just find out everything you can. Dig up as much as you can find and send it to me as soon as you have it." The 2 exchanged a look, then cautiously looked back at Leo. "Mr. Wallace, is this illegal?" Leo nodded without hesitation. "There might be some risks." The next moment, the 2 tech geeks' faces lit up and they rubbed their hands together in glee. "Excellent. This is the kind of exciting stuff we live for. Don't worry, sir. You can count on us." After lunch at the public cafeteria, intern Leo Wallace returned to the Sterling Business Division, planning to take a nap at his desk. He hadn't even warmed his seat when his mentor stormed over and yanked him up. "Let's go. Field work. How can a kid your age be sleeping at a time like this? Work, work, work." Evelyn had skipped lunch to review the 14 project reports from the Jiunha subsidiary one more time. Now, she was ready to march over to Jiunha and confront Graham Sterling in person. She decided to bring her apprentice along. He didn't seem particularly useful, but last time, the other Sterling heirs had been unusually cooperative when he was around. He could serve as a good luck charm. Besides, it was a chance for him to witness his mentor fearlessly confronting a powerful young master. As they were leaving, Evelyn remembered she hadn't eaten and was starting to feel hungry. She should have brought the box of cookies from Little Miss Sue, but it was too much trouble to go back to her desk now. Oh well. As she dragged her apprentice towards the elevator, she asked casually, "Hey, did you eat that cookie I gave you earlier? How was it?" Leo scratched his head, about to explain that his cookie had been stolen. Just then, a figure rushed past them. Excuse me. The man was clutching his stomach, making a beeline for the restrooms. He looked familiar. It was the guy who had stolen his cookie this morning. Leo watched the man's desperate sprint to the bathroom and offered an objective review. "Probably not very good. Evelyn was utterly confused. Huh. Under the watchful eyes of the entire office, Sherman Sterling, the esteemed elder of the Sterling family and uncle to the chairman, walked with a strained and embarrassed expression into the office of the market team supervisor. According to Sterling Holdings' internal regulations, only the audit department had the authority to summon and investigate employees. And given his rank and status as a family elder, any investigation would have required at least a deputy head of the audit department to personally request his presence. But today, those rules didn't seem to apply. The office door closed, shutting out the curious gazes of the employees in the open plan office. While the chairman's uncle was visiting the business division, the head of the division, Mr. Young, was relaxing in his own office, drinking tea and entertaining another distinguished guest. Mr. Joe, the chairman's most trusted associate and a formidable retired soldier, was sitting on the guest's sofa, his presence calm and steady. He accepted a small notebook from a deferential Mr. Young and flipped through it. Seeing the familiar phrasing, Mr. Joe felt a wave of nostalgic familiarity. No, not nostalgia. It was a memory he'd rather forget. After a careful review, he nodded in satisfaction. Not bad. The use of collision here is good. Mutual assistance. I've used that one myself. Concern about each other's makeup? A clever way to describe touching up lipstick after kissing. Brilliant. He slapped the table in approval, looking at Mr. Young with the proud gaze of a mentor whose student had finally mastered the craft. This skill, you've learned about 70% of it. Mr. Young sighed and pulled open the top drawer of his desk. Inside was a neat row of eye drops, most of them already used. Mr. Joe was moved. He gave a thumbs up. Make that 90%. After the small talk, Mr. Young closed the drawer and looked at Mr. Joe with curiosity. What brings you to our division today? The chairman's right-hand man should be by his boss's side. His visit couldn't be just to exchange notes on intelligence gathering. Mr. Joe smiled faintly. The young miss asked me to come. She said she has a job for me. The retired soldier's words were casual, revealing little. But the implication was enough to make Mr. Yang's expression turn serious. He didn't press for more details. But to call upon this man, whose combat skills were likely unmatched from Sterling Holdings to all of East Bay, the job little Miss Sue had in mind could only require the use of overwhelming force. He just wondered who the unlucky soul would be. It was a winter afternoon, the sun shining brightly but offering little warmth against the biting cold. Evelyn Vance and Leo Wallace took the subway to the Junha subsidiary of Sterling Holdings. They made a mad dash from the station through the cold wind, finally finding relief in the warm blast of the building's heating system. Rubbing her hands together, Evelyn told Leo to wait outside while she went into the manager's office of the investment department alone. But she returned empty-handed, a look of frustration on her face. A few minutes later, she came out, signed to her apprentice. He's not here. I wonder if he's avoiding me. Oh well, let's head back. We can try again another time. Hey, where did you get that cake? Leo was happily munching on 2 small cakes. He answered with his mouth full. The receptionist gave them to me. The employee dessert benefits at Junha are pretty good. Evelyn was about to lose her mind. Can you please not eat everywhere you go? You're single-handedly ruining our division's image with a single piece of cake. Ooh, that smells good. The next moment, mentor and apprentice were sitting together on the steps of the company entrance, happily eating cake. The sweet aroma filled the air. Evelyn let out a contented sigh. Oh well, they had come all this way for fieldwork. They didn't see the person they were looking for, but at least they got some cake. It wasn't a total loss. By the way, Leo said from beside her, as if he just remembered something, I was chatting with the receptionist just now. She said Graham Sterling hasn't been in the office lately. He's been spending all his time at the Queen's Bar. Evelyn was stunned. She stared at her apprentice as if he were some kind of alien. She had only been inside for a few minutes. How had he already befriended the receptionist? In that short time, he had not only scored cake, but also dug up this piece of classified information. You kid, are you some kind of mail siren? Despite her astonishment, the name Queen's Bar triggered a memory. She quickly recalled seeing the same name on the Junha Project financial report. Evelyn's energy returned in a rush. She jumped up from the steps. Let's go. Time to catch our man. In the supervisor's office of the 3rd Business Division, the loud, self-righteous protests of the family elder, Sherman Sterling, could be heard at first. Soon, the protests weakened. Only the calm, unhurried voice of a woman could be faintly heard. Finally, when the office door opened again, the chairman's uncle stumbled out, his face ashen, his steps unsteady. He looked as if his spine had been removed, all his former arrogance gone. Not long after he left, Mr. Joe stood before the desk. Claire handed the retired soldier a document, her tone casual. A list of the bidders Sherman, Sterling approved. Mr. Joe, I'll have to trouble you with this. Just like with Aegis Construction, if there are any fraudulent or blank contracts, bring back the evidence. Mr. Joe nodded, taking the list and scanning it. They were all real estate and construction projects, involving companies in that sector. Such contractors often had ties to unsavory elements. For a retired soldier, this was familiar territory. He counted the names and looked up at his young miss. 5 companies? Claire nodded, then shook her head. Perhaps more. Sherman Sterling's grandson, Graham, is in the Juinha investment department. When the grandfather is involved in something like this, the grandson is unlikely to be clean. Sherman swore his grandson had nothing to do with it. I don't believe him. When you go to collect the evidence from those 5 companies, you can ask around. Her words were calm and measured. Mr. Joe nodded and respectfully asked for further instructions. How should I ask? Claire's voice was even. Politely. Politely? With physical persuasion. The retired soldier nodded respectfully. Yes, ma'am. Jingen District, Queen's Bar. The bar officially opened at 7:00 p.m. So, Minter and apprentice found a small restaurant nearby to have dinner first. Work was work, but eating was non-negotiable. As they entered the bar, Evelyn didn't forget to give her apprentice a series of instructions. Don't wander off, don't do anything stupid, and follow my lead. Leo nodded absently, looking at his phone. The 2 tech guys from Happy Nest were efficient. They had already sent him a detailed report of their findings. He skimmed through it, then sent a message to Shun Shur, the head of his company's security department. He put his phone away and looked up. In that short time, his mentor had disappeared. She tells me not to wander off, then runs off herself. The bar was already bustling with a noisy, vibrant crowd. Leo found a small high-top table and sat down, looking around. He couldn't find his mentor, but he heard a familiar female voice call out in surprise. Leo. Leo instinctively turned towards the voice. In the aisle between a few tables, a cute, short-haired girl in a bar staff uniform was holding a tray of drinks, her eyes wide with shock as she stared at him. The moment he recognized her, Leo, for once, was speechless. The legendary fall guy. Daily call for boosts and gifts, big things happening tomorrow, probably. Leo never expected to run into Sarah Lynn here. Sarah Lynn. The name seemed so distant it was almost unfamiliar, a ghost from a life he hadn't thought about in a long time. Oh, wait. That wasn't quite right. He still found himself muttering, to hell with Sarah Lynn, on a regular basis. Never mind. But in terms of seeing her in person, it had been a long time. Setting aside that one glimpse Sarah had caught of him on the rooftop of the Vol KTV during winter break last year. A moment only she was aware of, Leo himself hadn't seen the girl he'd crushed on in his past life since their high school graduation in this one. Without him even realizing it, a year and a half had passed. The former it girl of their graduating class still had her short hair, but the cute, pretty look had been sharpened by a new, mature confidence. She'd probably learned how to do her makeup in college. Now, her face, combined with the bar staff uniform, glowed under the neon lights of Queens, giving her an exquisite, captivating charm. Still, he could see traces of the high school girl she used to be. Her height. Oh, she was still short. The high heels only barely made up for it. While Leo was sizing her up, Sarah was looking right back at him. She was just as surprised. It hadn't been long since she was chatting with her best friend, and his name had come up. Now, here he was, an unexpected encounter in the very bar where she worked. Looking at his familiar yet slightly changed face, Sarah felt a wave of dizziness, an inexplicable storm of emotions churning inside her. She had rehearsed what she would say to him 1,000 times if they ever met again. But now that he was actually here, the words were all stuck in her chest, a tangled mess. Finally, she took a light breath and smiled at her old classmate. Long time no see. You haven't changed a bit since high school, she said. Except you're a little more handsome. Leo grinned. You too, still short as ever. Sarah's face froze. The mortifying memory of that old insult struck her like lightning. The former class belle frantically cut him off. You don't have to say the rest. She looked like a disciple begging their master to stop chanting a painful spell. Leo snapped back to reality, slapping his forehead. The old jab had rolled off his tongue out of habit. It probably wasn't the most polite way to greet an old classmate after all this time. He quickly changed his tune with a laugh. You're even prettier than you were in high school. It was the honest truth. Sarah Lynn had been the prettiest girl in her class back then. Now, she had blossomed into someone even more refined and radiant. It was that classic post-high school transformation. Not like his Claire, of course. She'd started out at max level. There was no leveling up from there. Hearing Leo's compliment, a smile bloomed on Sarah's face. She'd received countless similar compliments in college and had grown used to them. But hearing it from him, for some reason, just made her happy. Then, as if remembering something, she tilted her head. So, what score would you give me now? Her tone was teasing. The little scoring incident in front of the honor roll board at Northwood High had long since faded. It was no longer a sore spot, just an old inside joke. Leo laughed, about to answer, when the voice of another victim of his rating system cut in. What's this about scoring? Sarah, who are you talking to? Chloe Choi, also in a server's uniform, walked over curiously. When she saw Leo, her eyes went wide. Leo, Wallace. Leo recognized her too, but her name escaped him for a moment. He blurted out instinctively, "Oh, the 1-point girl." Chloe blinked. A second later, it hit her. Chloe, 1 point. Choi nearly lost her mind. Who are you calling 1-point girl? My name is Chloe Choi. Chloe Choi. Despite her outburst, more than a year had passed, and Chloe had matured. She waved a dismissive hand. Whatever. I was a huge bitch to you back then, too. Let's just call it even. Leo nodded in agreement. Okay, you're 2 from now on. Chloe stared. On the verge of a second meltdown, she shrieked, Sarah, don't hold me back. I'm going to kill this guy. After the commotion died down, the warmth of a reunion between old classmates took over. The last time they'd seen each other was on the grounds of Northwood High. Now, they were meeting again in a bar in a different city, far from home. Old grudges had faded, replaced by a sense of familiarity and joy. Leo learned that they were in town traveling, working part-time at the bar to cover their expenses. Chloe looked around. This place is pretty expensive. You're here for a drink? She asked Leo. He shook his head. No, I'm out on a work assignment with my mentor. He gave a brief, vague explanation. Sarah and Chloe were surprised to hear he was already working during his winter break. You're only a sophomore and you're already doing an internship. Sarah looked at him, her eyes filled with wonder and admiration. That's amazing. She remembered all the legendary feats he had accomplished in the last few months of senior year, and the stories she'd heard about him from old classmates who went to Berkeley. Looking at the boy who had only grown more handsome and confident in the years since she'd last seen him, it suddenly seemed perfectly reasonable that he would be doing something like this. Chloe, however, couldn't help but roll her eyes. What kind of company hires a sophomore for an internship right off the bat? For all you know, this mentor of yours is a scammer. Leo, you better not be getting conned. Just as she spoke, Evelyn Vance came storming through the crowd. You little punk, I told you not to wander off. I almost couldn't find you, she scolded. And what the hell? It's only been a few minutes, and you're already hitting on the staff. Can you turn off that male siren charm for 1 second? Speak of the devil. General Evelyn was shocked to see her apprentice chatting up 2 girls in waitress uniforms. Leo just laughed and introduced everyone. Chloe and Sarah were stunned by Evelyn's looks and presence. Their eyes widened in surprise. They never imagined Leo's mentor would be such a gorgeous woman. Evelyn was just as surprised. High school classmates. What a coincidence. Then she remembered something and turned to Leo, her eyes lighting up with gossip. Hey, didn't you say your girlfriend was a high school classmate? Her gaze fell on Sarah, sizing her up from head to toe. Could this be the one? Sarah froze, a little embarrassed, but quickly recovered and waved her hand with a smile. Ma'am, you've got it wrong. I'm not his girlfriend. Leo's girlfriend is much prettier than me. Evelyn's jaw dropped. Prettier than you? She looked Sarah over again. The girl was undeniably cute and pretty, easily the belle of any class, maybe even department-level gorgeous, even if she was a little on the short side. Not having met her apprentice's girlfriend, Evelyn was skeptical of Sarah's claim. Was it possible this brat's girlfriend was even better looking than the girl in front of her? How could a diamond fall for such a lump of coal? Her reaction just made Sarah laugh helplessly. She really is prettier than me. Much prettier. Standing beside them, Leo, Hammer, Wallace nodded thoughtlessly, adding an objective. It's true. His mentor promptly smacked him on the back of the head. True my ass. Have some tact when you're talking in front of a girl. You little punk. Still, she reluctantly accepted it, looking at her apprentice with puzzlement. If she's that beautiful, what does she see in you? Then she suddenly remembered the cookies she'd tried. General Evelyn instantly understood. It all made sense now. Even the most beautiful flower has a fatal flaw. Her looks were world-class, but her cooking was world-ending. On balance, it was perfectly reasonable. The group chatted for a few more minutes. Chloe and Sarah asked Evelyn about her work assignment, curious why a business trip would lead them to a bar. Evelyn, already aware that her apprentice's classmates were working here part-time, just laughed it off and gave them a vague, evasive answer. She was careful not to reveal her connection to Sterling Holdings. Instead, she casually and deliberately asked a few questions about the bar's owner. Sarah and Chloe, completely unsuspecting, answered without reservation. They knew Queens had several shareholders, and the most powerful one was supposedly the young master of the Sterling family, the same family that owned Sterling Holdings. They also mentioned that when the owners visited, they usually stayed in their exclusive private rooms and rarely appeared in the main lounge. It's a VIP section in the back. Access is strictly controlled. You need an invitation, and they check your ID to get in. Even the servers are dedicated senior staff. New employees like us aren't allowed in. Sarah explained this to Evelyn, even adding a well-meaning warning. There are guards at the entrance. I heard someone try to sneak in once and got taught a lesson. You and Leo should just stay out here in the main lounge. Don't wander off. Evelyn nodded repeatedly, thanking Sarah profusely on the surface. In reality, she and Leo exchanged a quick, subtle glance. Nothing more needed to be said. Mentor and apprentice were perfectly in sync. They were, after all, on the clock. The floor manager had already noticed his two employees slacking off and called out to them disapprovingly. Chloe hurried back to work first. Evelyn seized the opportunity. Well, I'm going to pop over to the restroom. You two catch up. With that, she turned and vanished. Leo and Sarah were left alone at the high-top table. Sarah looked at Leo and asked with a smile, You and Claire Sterling are still together, right? Are things going well? Leo beamed. They're great. What about you? Are you dating anyone in college? Sarah shook her head, smiling. No, some guys have asked me out, but it feels like dating in college is so much more superficial than it was in high school. She paused, then laughed at herself. Not that I have any room to talk. I was pretty superficial myself back then. Right now, I just want to calm down, focus on myself, study, and enjoy college life. Traveling like this once in a while is nice, too. It's enough. Leo watched her. The spoiled little princess from high school had truly matured, tempered by time and the college experience. He smiled softly. Yeah, that sounds great. They chatted for a little while longer, reminiscing about funny moments from high school. Time seemed to have stretched and softened those memories, coating them in a warm, nostalgic glow. The past had been washed clean, leaving a feeling of peace. The atmosphere was light and comfortable. After a few more minutes, Sarah smiled and said her goodbyes, needing to get back to work. But as she turned to leave, she stopped. She turned back to Leo. Leo, I was a real jerk back then. I'm sorry. It was the one sentence that had been buried in the heart of Northwood High's class bell for a year and a half. Today, she could finally say it with sincerity. Leo paused. Then he smiled. He didn't offer a simple, magnanimous forgiveness like in some feel-good novel. Instead, he did something completely unexpected. I'm a little thirsty. I could go for a drink. Go get me one from the bar. A year and a half ago, on a bright morning in the hallway outside their classroom at Northwood High, the class belle, a proud princess, had looked at the boy pursuing her and commanded, I want some ice cream. Go to the corner store and buy some for us. Like a boomerang, the moment had traveled across more than 500 days and returned to its target. It wasn't a petty act of revenge. It was an offer of peace, a way to finally be even. Sarah understood. She broke into a brilliant smile, her eyes shining with relief. Okay, you wait right here. These legs of mine are pretty fast, you know. The bar's floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the neon-lit street outside. The lights fell on the two young people as they looked at each other and smiled. In that shared smile, all the old grievances seemed to dissolve. On a cold winter night, a boy and a girl from small town, bound by a shared past, met again in a bar far from home. A year and a half was enough time for them to have quietly grown into adults. There was no need for tearful reunions, only a warm nostalgia for the years gone by. And that was good enough. Good enough. That's what Evelyn Vance was thinking, too. Using the excuse of going to the restroom, she had snuck over to the VIP corridor behind the main lounge. Peeking her head out from behind a wall, she saw that one of the two guards at the entrance seemed to be on a bathroom break. The other was engrossed in a men's magazine. Only one guy. That made things easier. Wincing with regret, she pulled a $1 coin from her pocket and tossed it to the other end of the corridor. The coin clattered loudly as it hit the floor and rolled away. The guard at the entrance glanced up, saw it was just $1, and went back to his magazine, unimpressed. Damn it. General Evelyn almost lost her cool. What kind of person doesn't even bother to pick up a huge sum of money like one whole dollar? Painfully, she pulled out another coin and threw it again. When the sound of a second coin hitting the floor echoed through the hall, the guard finally sensed something was off. Frowning, he got up and walked over to investigate. This was her chance. General Evelyn, the legendary champion of the cafeteria, activated her max-level speed. While the guard's back was turned as he bent down to pick up the coins, she shot out from her hiding spot. Whoosh! She sprinted into the VIP corridor. Mission accomplished. Author's note. The wife's a bit sick. Had to take her to the hospital. Was in the middle of the 3rd chapter for today. Probably won't make it. Apologies to everyone. I'll use the time to fine-tune the plot. Tomorrow's update will be awesome. First, a feint to the east. Then, a 15-meter sprint through the enemy's blind spot while he was distracted. Executing the combo with flawless precision, Evelyn Vance had successfully bypassed the security checkpoint and slipped into the VIP section of Queens. Hiding behind a wall, General Evelyn let out a sigh of relief, patting her chest. So smooth. All those skills I honed in the global cafeteria weren't for nothing. They really come in handy at critical moments. It was a shame her little apprentice wasn't here to witness his mentor's secret agent prowess. Evelyn felt a brief pang of regret, but she quickly refocused, cautiously peeking around to survey her surroundings. Queens was divided into 2 areas. The main lounge took up about 2/3 of the space, separated from the VIP section by a service corridor. It was like 2 different worlds. Having crossed the corridor, Evelyn now found herself in an empty hallway. Not far ahead was a large, partially open door, from which the booming, chaotic sounds of music could be heard. Evelyn was about to head over when the door was pushed open from the inside. She immediately ducked behind a wall, peeking out to watch. And in that one glance, she recognized the figure emerging from the VIP lounge. It was Graham Sterling. The 3rd-generation scion of the Sterling family was dressed in flashy, expensive designer clothes, exuding an air of arrogant wealth. But at this moment, the young master's face was pale and anxious as he took a call on his phone. Evelyn strained her ears, trying to overhear. She could only catch bits and pieces. The person on the other end sounded like an old man, his voice urgent and strained even through the phone. That girl, she's traced it back to me. You need to be careful. Your grandfather has taken the fall for everything. You have to stay out of trouble. And sever all ties with the Crestview family. From her corner, Evelyn drew in a sharp breath. Although she couldn't be 100% certain who was on the phone, the fragments she'd heard were enough for her to make an educated guess. Graham Sterling's grandfather, the chairman's own uncle, Sherman Sterling. It seemed that little Miss Sue had also traced the problem to him, but the family elder was still trying to cover for his grandson. This call was clearly a warning, telling Graham to clean up his mess immediately. Too bad for them. They'd run into General Evelyn. Evelyn took a deep breath, the fighting spirit of a dedicated employee igniting in her eyes. 14 projects, a 9-figure sum. The company's assets couldn't be squandered like this. She had to get to the bottom of it. Just as she steeled her resolve, she saw Graham Sterling hang up and walk back toward the VIP lounge. The moment his figure disappeared through the doorway, she emerged from her hiding spot and quickly, silently followed. She reached the slightly ajar door and peered inside before slipping in herself. The first thing that hit her was the dim light and the wall of loud, rhythmic music. Evelyn didn't have time to cover her ears. She agilely found a large potted plant in a corner and hid behind it, peering out through the leaves. The VIP lounge at Queens had a completely different atmosphere from the main hall. It was more opulent, almost sinisterly seductive under the dim, rose-colored lights. Downstairs were rows of luxurious booths, and the ceiling was a soaring 6 or 7 meters high. Upstairs, there were semi-private, enclosed rooms. Mixed in with the pounding music, she could hear the faint sounds of flirtatious chatter, laughter, and drinking games. Evelyn also noticed a strange smell. She couldn't tell if it was pleasant or not. It was like tobacco, but not any kind she had ever smelled before. It made her feel a little dizzy. Just then, in an open space not far from her potted plant, she heard angry, hushed voices. One of them belonged to Graham Sterling. Evelyn quickly composed herself, held her breath, and watched. In the dim light, she saw the young master of Sterling Holdings, his face contorted with anger and panic, grabbing another young man by the collar. He kept his voice low, but it was still a furious hiss. Are you deaf? The company has already traced this to my grandfather. I'm next. I'm out. I'm not doing business with you Crestview bastards anymore. Give me back those 14 project tenders. The other young man seemed completely unfazed by having his collar grabbed. He pushed Graham's hands away and calmly straightened his shirt. You must be joking, Mr. Sterling. Business is a matter of mutual agreement, based on trust. You signed all the contracts. You've already taken 3 or 4 dividend payments from this bar. Now you want to just walk away? There's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. His tone was light, almost reasonable, but it only enraged Graham further. He could barely contain his voice as he roared. Trust? My ass. You forced me to sign those damn papers. This was all a setup. You told me we were just opening a bar together. Who the hell knew you'd be running a den of vice, gambling, drugs, the works? You, Kaden Crestview, you deliberately dragged me into this. You're holding this over my head to make me do your family's dirty work. His shouts were mostly lost in the deafening music of the bar, but they still reached the corner behind the potted plant. They fell upon Evelyn's ears like a clap of thunder, and her pupils constricted in shock. Back in the main lounge of Queens, Leo sat at a high-top table, taking a sip of his draft beer. Sarah Lynn had just brought it over. The girl had really shown her sincerity. Not only did she deliver the drink, but she put it on her own tab. A freebie on a work assignment. Comrade Leo was very pleased. He decided he would curse Sarah Lynn a few less times from now on. But speaking of which, his mentor had been gone for a while now, supposedly gathering intel. Leo thought for a moment, put down his glass, and stood up. He glanced around before heading toward the service corridor in the back. Just then, his phone buzzed. He picked it up and saw a text from Commissioner Evan Grant, saying he was off duty and asking where to meet. Leo walked toward the corridor while casually typing a reply. Queens. The music in the VIP lounge of Queens was still deafening. Men and women at the bar and in the booths swayed to the rhythm, laughing and drinking, oblivious to the confrontation unfolding between two of the bar shareholders near the entrance. Graham Sterling was filled with regret. He didn't want to be a shareholder anymore. In the beginning, he had been fooled by Kaden Crestview's flattery and smooth talk. He'd agreed to open the bar together, and he hadn't even had to invest his own money. He thought he had scored a free stake in the business just by lending his Sterling family name. He had been smug about it at first, but he never in his wildest dreams imagined that it was all a trap. Queens was a ticking time bomb, and once he touched it, there was no letting go. An ordinary bar would have been fine, but one day he had wandered in the VIP lounge by chance and discovered the shocking, filthy secrets hidden behind the bar's glamorous, high-end facade. By the time he found out, it was too late. Kaden had warned him with a smirk. We're both shareholders of Queens. In fact, you're the main owner and legal representative. If any of this gets out, you'll be the first one to go down. Graham knew it was true. If this was exposed, forget being arrested and sentenced to prison. If his family found out, his third uncle, the chairman of Sterling Holdings, would never let him get away with it. This wasn't just about him. It would tarnish the reputation of the entire company, the entire family. But the damage was done. Regret was useless. With this leverage against him, Kaden had forced him, in his capacity as the deputy manager of the investment department at Junha, a Sterling Holdings subsidiary, to sign off on over a dozen project tenders. They were worth over $100 million. The contracts were awarded to a series of shell companies owned by the Crestview Group, completely bypassing the standard approval process. Only then did Graham Sterling finally see Kaden's true colors and understand his meticulously planned scheme. But by then, he was already in too deep to get out. Graham looked at Kaden in despair. The family's about to find me out. What am I supposed to tell them? Once this blows up, I'll be fired from the company. No, I'll be disowned by the family. His voice was almost a plea. Kaden, however, remained nonchalant, even smiling. But they haven't found out yet, have they? Perfect timing. You can use this opportunity to hurry up and sign the rest of the projects. Once the contracts are finalized, it's a done deal. Sterling Holdings and your family will have no choice but to accept it. When that's done, I'll even give you a 20% cut of all these projects. How about that? Graham stared, stunned. He didn't know if he was more shocked by Kaden's greed or genuinely tempted by the offer. Seeing Graham's hesitation, Kaden casually slung an arm around his shoulders, his voice dropping to an even more seductive whisper. Look, you're just a junior manager at a subsidiary of Sterling Holdings. You have no real power in the Sterling family. Why not cash in on what you have now? Even if you leave the Sterlings, you can come work with me. I guarantee you, life will be 1,000 times better than being a Sterling family lackey. As Kaden spoke, a look of struggle appeared on Graham's face. Under the immense pressure of the crisis, with nowhere else to turn, the promise of a huge reward was actually making him waver. At the same time, hiding behind the potted plant by the door, Evelyn felt the hair on her arms stand on end. Her scalp was tingling. Her heart was pounding uncontrollably. Before coming here, she never would have imagined stumbling upon such a massive secret. The situation was 10, 100, 1,000 times more serious than she had initially thought. This bar, Queen's, was a cesspool hidden beneath a glamorous exterior. The intimate displays of the men and women in the booths she could glimpse in the dim light went far beyond what was normal, to the point where she could barely look. The sounds from the private rooms upstairs were mixed with the rattle of dice and the shuffling of cards. And that strange tobacco smell. Evelyn finally realized what it was. It wasn't tobacco. It was a substance strictly banned in the country. And all of this was just a tool for that polite, well-dressed young man named Kaden to make a fortune and drag Graham Sterling down with him, tying the Sterling family scion to his sinking ship. But everything happening in the bar was nothing compared to the terrifying words Kaden had just spoken. His greed was limitless. He didn't just want the 100 million in tenders he already had. He wanted to completely turn Graham Sterling, to carve another huge chunk of flesh from Sterling Holdings while he still had the chance. At that moment, Evelyn felt her hands and feet go cold. She tried to calm herself, to take out her phone and secretly record this, or maybe to text little Miss Sue a warning. Just then, the door next to her was pushed open from the outside. The light from the corridor flooded the small space behind the potted plant. And with it came a sharp shout. "Who's there? What are you doing hiding back there?" Caught by security, Evelyn was shoved in front of Graham and Kaden. There was no way to deny it. Her phone was confiscated, and the Sterling Holdings employee ID card in her wallet was found. Graham's face changed. "Business development. Evelyn Vance. It's you?" She was the one who had called him just a short while ago to verify the project financials. It was because of her that he had panicked and avoided showing his face at the subsidiary. He never thought she would be resourceful enough to find him here. At this point, Evelyn wasn't worried about her own safety. She struggled against the bar's security guard and looked at Graham, pleading, "Mr. Sterling, don't listen to him. These people are ruthless scoundrels. If you really get mixed up with them, it will not end well for you. You are a member of the Sterling family. If you've done something wrong, just admit it to the company, to the family, and accept the consequences. How can a Sterling work with outsiders to harm your own family? Your own company?" Her words made Graham's face contort with struggle once again. But Kaden, standing nearby, just chuckled and clapped his hands. "Impressive, Sterling Holdings. Such a brave and dedicated employee. Mr. Sterling, if you listen to her, you'll be sacrificing yourself to protect your family's interests. That's not a very good deal for you, is it?" Graham's face shifted between green and red. Evelyn, now both shocked and furious, turned to Kaden and shouted, "I don't care who you are. Stop trying to manipulate him. I'm telling you, what you're doing is illegal. I can expose all of this right now, and you can all wait to rot in jail." Kaden laughed, but his eyes were cold and devoid of any humor. "You're right, which means we can't let someone like you leave." As he spoke, several more security guards started moving toward Evelyn. A look of alarm crossed her face. "What are you doing? I'm warning you, this is a civilized society. Don't you dare try anything." The lead guard, a man named Zeke K., cracked his knuckles with a malicious grin, his eyes raking over Evelyn with undisguised lust. "Don't worry, we just want you to have a little fun with us. If you play nice, maybe we'll let you go." The leering young man and his guards slowly closed in on the beautiful woman. Graham's expression flickered. He seemed to want to summon the courage to step in and protect his company's employee, but in the end, he couldn't bring himself to move. Evelyn's face turned pale, her heart sinking to the bottom of her stomach. She backed away step by step, until it felt like she was on the edge of a cliff with nowhere left to go. Just then, she heard a creak from behind her. It was the sound of the VIP lounge door being pushed open, and then a familiar voice full of surprise. "Oh, it's unlocked." Evelyn spun around. Everyone in the room, Graham, Kaden, Zeke, and the guards, jerked their heads toward the sound. There, at the door, stood a handsome young man, casually pushing his way in as if he owned the place. He looked around and remarked with admiration, "Wow, crowded in here." Author's note: been with the wife all day, just finished 2 chapters. There's one more high-stakes chapter tonight to wrap this arc up. Wait for it. Aiming for before 10 p.m. Update: the next chapter is going to be 6,000 characters. Still writing, will be done by midnight. You can wait up or read in the morning. It was hardly the time for it, but in the face of danger, Evelyn couldn't help but whisper to her apprentice, "How did you get in?" The VIP corridor was normally guarded by 2 security personnel. General Evelyn herself had only managed to get through with a combination of luck and genius. Intern Leo answered without batting an eye. "Oh, there was only 1 guard at the entrance just now. I used the old 2-coin feint. 1 wasn't enough." The guy was super greedy. His voice was pained as he said the last part. Evelyn's eyes lit up. Like mentor, like apprentice. They had even come up with the same plan. If the situation weren't so dire, she would have high-fived him in celebration. But reality quickly set in, and her expression changed. She pulled on Leo's arm. I told you not to wander off. What are you doing barging in here? Now we're in real trouble. At that moment, Graham Sterling, Kaden Crestview, and Zeke K all recognized the newcomer. They froze. Graham's eyes widened. Leo, Kaden, and Zeke looked just as shocked and furious. Leo? They had all spoken at once. Then the three of them looked at each other, confused. Evelyn was also baffled, a giant question mark appearing over her head. Wait, how do they all know each other? Kaden's gaze, cold and sharp, fell on Graham. You know him? Graham was at a loss for words. He glanced at Leo, his face filled with shame, and managed to say, he's part of my family. The thought that this young man was involved with his cousin, the family's crown jewel, and that his current predicament had just been witnessed by him, meant that the two most powerful people in Sterling Holdings would soon know everything. Graham's face turned deathly pale. Kaden, however, ignored Graham's expression. He seemed to have an epiphany. Part of the Sterling family. That explained a lot. Kaden turned his head, his eyes fixed on Leo, the coldness in them now almost impossible to hide. No wonder. I was thinking, how could an ordinary student have so many connections and skills? Turns out you have the Sterling family backing you up. Leo, right? I never thought we'd be so fated to meet again. Evelyn was about to have a brain aneurysm. What was going on? What did her apprentice have to do with the Sterling family? And when had he made an enemy of this sinister-looking young man? Sensing his mentor's confusion, Leo didn't have time to explain. He met Kaden's icy tone with a nod of agreement. Indeed, he glanced around the VIP lounge, then looked back at Kaden and Zeke, offering some friendly advice. So, are you guys going to turn yourselves in, or should I do it for you? The room fell silent. Then Zeke burst out laughing. Holy shit, turn ourselves in? Wallace, are you brain dead? Ha ha ha. Kaden almost laughed too. Composing himself, he looked at Leo, his face still full of amusement. Turn ourselves in? On what grounds? Leo's gaze swept over the sordid scene. Based on all this, I think that should be enough. He really hadn't expected the operation to be this extensive. He was getting a bit of a headache just thinking about having to log all these people in his little notebook. Kaden smiled, the mockery on his face growing more pronounced. Enough? I don't think so. Why don't you do us the favor and arrest us all yourself? Zeke was getting impatient. Kaden, why are we wasting time with this guy? Let's just take care of him and the woman and be done with it. Kaden nodded, then smiled at Leo again. It's been a while. Since you're here, on my dime, we can finally settle our old scores. His words were polite, but the chilling undertone was enough to make one's skin crawl. Zeke and several large, imposing security guards began to close in on Leo and Evelyn again. Just then, a sharp voice cut through the air. Wait. Everyone instinctively turned toward the sound. A small figure hurried in from the main entrance. Sarah Lynn rushed to Leo's side and looked at Kaden, her expression anxious. Sir, boss, I think there's been a misunderstanding. They're my friends, they just wandered in by mistake. Please don't be angry. I'll take them out right now. As she spoke, she tried to shield Leo and Evelyn with her small frame. Kaden was taken aback by Sarah's sudden appearance. He looked at the familiar bar staff uniform she was wearing and then at Leo, a strange expression on his face. Even our own staff is on your side? How are you so popular with the ladies? First, there was the girl in the fertilizer bag mascot at the comic convention. Then there was the ethereal beauty from the Aragorn and Arwen cosplay photos. And this stunning woman from Sterling Holdings. Now, another cute waitress from his own bar. For a moment, Kaden felt a sense of absurdity, as if the guy in front of him was the protagonist of some novel. If he was the protagonist, then what did that make him? The villain? The thought made Kaden grin. Even if this were a novel, in this story, he, the villain, was the true protagonist. Take care of her too. Not wanting to waste any more time on a mere waitress, Kaden gave the order with a casual wave of his hand, as if sealing her fate. Zeke grinned maliciously, and with his men, prepared to move in. Suddenly, bang, the door was thrown open once again. Don't move. Chloe Chue, panting as if she had just run a 100-meter dash, bent over with her hands on her knees. But her phone was held high in the air. I've already called the police. They'll be here any minute. Nobody move. Graham was stunned. Kaden, Zeke, and the guards froze. Evelyn's face lit up with excitement and surprise. Leo raised an eyebrow and gave Sarah an impressed look. Sarah met his gaze with a proud smile. Don't underestimate me. Earlier, in the main lounge, she had finished her tasks and was about to go find Leo to chat when she saw him heading toward the VIP corridor. She remembered Evelyn's mysterious disappearance and the vague way they had talked about their work assignment. The former class belle of Northwood High wasn't stupid. She sensed something was wrong and had quietly followed. It was her first time near the VIP lounge. Peeking through the door, she had seen and heard things that shocked her. She had immediately texted her best friend for help. Then, seeing the situation escalating, she had grit her teeth and burst in to buy some time. And now, everything had finally come together. Chloe had caught her breath. She stood up straight and shot Leo a smug look, lifting her chin. "Well, what score do I get for that?" Leo nodded sincerely and gave her a thumbs up. A perfect 10, but just then, an unexpected voice cut in. "Aren't you celebrating a little too soon?" Kaden's face showed no signs of panic. Instead, he wore a playful smile. "What? You think it's all over?" As he spoke, Zeke and his men took another step forward. This time, even Chloe started to panic, holding her phone up high. "What are you doing?" "I told you I called the police. They're on their way." As soon as she finished speaking, the sound of footsteps echoed from the corridor, growing rapidly closer. Everyone looked and saw a man in his 30s, in a police uniform, striding in with a stern expression. Chloe, Sarah, and Evelyn's faces lit up with joy. "That was fast. We just called. The East Bay PD is amazing." The uniformed man scanned the room with a cold gaze and asked in a deep voice, "What's going on here?" Chloe eagerly stepped forward. "Officer, I'm the one who called." But before she could finish, Kaden cut her off. "Just a small misunderstanding here. I didn't expect to trouble you, Captain Russo." The girls turned in shock to see Kaden beaming as he walked up to the uniformed man. "Captain Russo, you're here. Why didn't you let us know? We have your usual booth, drinks, and girls all ready for you." Under the disbelieving stares of Sarah, Chloe, and the others, the uniformed man's stern expression softened. He casually took a cigarette from Kaden, and, as he exhaled a cloud of smoke, he said, "Just got the call on the radio. Lucky I was nearby. I told the guys from the local precinct to stand down and came to check it out myself." He glanced at Kaden and added gruffly, "You need to be more careful. Don't make me clean up your messes all the time." Kaden nodded obsequiously. Yes, of course. I'll be more careful in the future. And don't be a stranger, Captain." "What do you mean, my business?" "This is our business." The familiar way they spoke to each other left Sarah and Chloe utterly stunned. Chloe cried out in disbelief, "Aren't you a police officer? How do you know him?" You're covering for him." Before the uniformed man could answer, Zeke chimed in with a smirk. "Hey, watch your mouth. He's not just any police officer. Captain Russo is the captain of the Jingen District Criminal Investigation Division." Then, as if remembering something, he slapped his forehead. "Oh, right, I forgot to tell you. Captain Russo, he happens to be a shareholder in Queens, too. Ha 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 ha." The brutal reality of the situation hit them like a ton of bricks. For innocent students like Sarah and Chloe, who had yet to leave the ivory tower of academia, the shock was enough to leave their minds blank. Evelyn's face had already changed. Unlike the two students, she was more familiar with the corrupt alliances of society. Her heart sank. She realized there was no easy way out of this. Among them, only Leo remained calm. Listening to Zeke's unrestrained laughter, his eyes fell on the captain of the Criminal Investigation Division. He seemed to be searching his memory, and then he recognized him. The captain of the Jingen District Criminal Investigation Division. "You're Lu I Mean." The police captain, whose name was Lu I Mean, frowned and looked at Leo intently. "You know me?" Leo nodded. "I've heard of you." Then he looked at him and smiled. "It's a good name. It's a bit wasted on you." No one expected him to say something so calmly provocative. The others were stunned. Zeke was the first to react, roaring with anger. "Who the hell do you think you're talking to?" Captain Russo's face instantly turned cold. He didn't lose his temper, but his gaze on Leo was now filled with malice. "If you know who I am," he said coolly, "then you should know I can't let you leave." He turned to Kaden and said casually, "It's not convenient for me to get involved. Make sure you clean this up." Kaden nodded respectfully. "Don't worry. I'll handle it properly." Turning back to Leo, Kaden smiled. "You see? The tables have turned. The first time, you kicked me out, acting like it was your territory. This time, it's my territory. The second time, you told me to get lost, relying on your connections. This time, I have connections too." As he spoke, Kaden slowly walked toward Leo until he was standing right in front of him, the mocking curve of his lips growing more pronounced. "But I'm more generous than you. You told me to get lost, but I'm not going to let you leave. Not only am I not going to let you leave, I'm going to make you pay for everything you've done, one debt at a time." As he said the last sentence, the curve of Kaden's lips twisted into a vicious snarl. He raised his hand and swung it, aiming a hard slap at Leo's face. Leo didn't dodge. He had anticipated Kaden's move and was ready to counter and subdue him. But while he had predicted Kaden's actions, there was one thing he hadn't foreseen. Suddenly, a force shoved him hard, pushing him out of the way. Slap! A sharp, ear-splitting crack echoed through the room. Pushed aside, Leo's pupils constricted. He looked up sharply and saw his mentor standing where he had been just a moment ago. The slap hadn't hit Leo. It had landed squarely on Evelyn's face. Her fair, smooth cheek instantly turned red and swollen, and a faint trickle of blood appeared. The force of the blow was so great it nearly knocked her to the ground. Sarah and Chloe gasped in shock, their eyes welling up with tears. Leo rushed to Evelyn's side, steadying her. Evelyn. When he turned to look at Kaden and the others, his eyes were filled with a chilling, unprecedented coldness. Evelyn swayed, barely able to stand. Her head was spinning, and she felt nauseous. The side of her face was throbbing with a pain so intense it was almost numb. But the first thing she did was shake her head and grab Leo's arm, her voice low and urgent. Don't do anything reckless. If you still see me as your mentor, you'll listen to me. Her voice was strained and pleading. She struggled to lift her head and look at Kaden, trying her best to ignore the searing pain in her cheek and force a smile. Mr. Crestview, right? I'm sorry. We've made a mistake. Leo is my apprentice. He just followed me here. This is all my fault. If you want to punish someone, punish me. Leo and his two classmates are just students. They don't know any better, and they won't cause any trouble. Please, be the bigger person and let them go. Whatever you want, just take it out on me. I'm good looking, and I know how to behave. I'll do whatever you want. Please, I'm begging you. Her voice was tight and trembling with pain, but she spoke with the utmost humility and deference. As she finished, she struggled to lower her head and bow, a gesture of sincere pleading. Though her body was bent, she still stood like a mother hen protecting her chicks, shielding Leo and the two girls behind her. Her posture even gave Kaden, Zeke, and Captain Russo pause. Then Kaden chuckled. Incredible. Self-sacrifice. I never thought I'd get to see such a good show. Then he shook his head regretfully. But unfortunately, no deal. When he looked up again, his face was twisted into a cruel, vicious sneer. Today, none of you are leaving. More security guards came in from the main entrance. They were all large and muscular, exuding an air of menace, and they blocked the exit with iron bars. The area in front of the door was now crowded with people. Even some of the patrons in the booths and private rooms on the second floor drunkenly leaned over to see what was going on. Seeing this, Sarah's spirits lifted. She took a few steps forward and shouted with all her might. Everyone, please help. There are criminals here. The owner of the bar is about to hurt people. Chloe also snapped out of her stupor and yelled, Yes, please help us. Call the police. Don't let these criminals get away with this. The two girls' desperate cries for help were almost loud enough to drown out the booming music. However, in the VIP lounge, the men and women in the booths and private rooms merely paused. The gazes that fell from the second floor held no indignation or sympathy, only indifference and amusement. They soon looked away, returning to their drinking, card games, and drugs. As the music once again swelled to a deafening volume, the two girls' cries were completely swallowed. Sarah and Chloe were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Suddenly, they felt a chill run through them, a coldness that seemed to drain all their strength. On this deep winter night, the air in the city was bitingly cold. On the most prosperous and bustling streets, the neon lights flickered. Inside the most luxurious VIP lounge of Queens, countless people were lost in a drunken stupor, oblivious to the world around them, leaving only a few small, lonely figures, so insignificant it seemed they no longer had the strength to fight against their fate. Kaden laughed, a happy, triumphant laugh. He relished this feeling of being in complete control. The humiliation he had suffered at the hands of this guy in the past, he could now repay it 10 times, 100 times over. He looked at Leo, his eyes filled with the playful cruelty of a cat toying with a mouse. Looks like calling for help didn't work. Now, do you have any other tricks up your sleeve? Just as he finished speaking, a phone rang. Leo ignored Kaden, took out his phone, glanced at the screen, and answered, his voice calm and pleasant. You're here? I'm in a back room, but there are some people blocking the way. Before he could finish, Captain Russo's face turned cold, and he barked, Who told you could answer the phone? Put it away. The voice on the other end seemed to ask a question, its tone turning serious. Leo smiled, looked at Captain Russo, and held out the phone. Why don't you take it? Captain Russo snatched the phone and spoke coldly into it. Police investigation. The owner of this phone is a suspect in a criminal case. If you don't want any trouble, hang up now. The voice on the other end paused for a moment. Then, when it spoke again, it seemed to say something the others couldn't hear clearly, but they saw the captain's body suddenly tremble. He could barely hold onto the phone. Captain Russo's face turned from pale to ashen, completely drained of color. He looked up, his eyes filled with terror and disbelief, and glanced at Leo. His trembling hand slowly held the phone out. Leo looked at him and smiled calmly. Shouldn't you be heading outside? Captain Russo's lips trembled, and he managed a difficult nod. Then, ignoring the concerned questions from Kaden and Zeke, who sensed something was wrong, the captain of the Criminal Investigation Division shoved Kaden's hand away and stumbled out of the room. His figure disappeared. Everyone in the room was stunned. Kaden and Zeke watched him leave, a sense of foreboding creeping into their hearts. Zeke's eyelids started to twitch. Kaden, what's going on? Kaden's face was grim. Just wait. Wait and see. 1 minute passed. Then 2, then 3. After 3 minutes, Captain Russo had not returned. Kaden, growing restless, sent Zeke to the main lounge to check things out. For minutes. 5 minutes. Zeke had not returned either. After 7 minutes, Kaden, now unable to contain his alarm, was about to go out himself when 2 of the guards from the main lounge stumbled in, their faces filled with terror. Mr. Crestview, it's bad. 8 minutes later, the Jing'an District Police Department dispatched dozens of officers, who swarmed into Queens. 10 minutes later, more than a dozen fully equipped officers with batons and riot shields stormed the VIP lounge. 15 minutes later, all the patrons and bar staff in the VIP lounge suspected of involvement in prostitution, gambling, and drugs were arrested and taken away, including Graham Sterling. Evelyn, Sarah, and Chloe were also taken to the police station to cooperate with the investigation and give their statements. Before she left, Evelyn couldn't help but look at her apprentice, her voice strained but full of worry. What about you? Leo just smiled gently. You go on ahead. I still have some things to take care of. After everyone else had left, only a few scattered patrons and bar staff remained. Surprisingly, besides Leo, Kaden Crestview, who had collapsed onto the floor, pale and defeated, was also left behind. 20 minutes later, the door to the VIP lounge was pushed open. A man in his 30s, looking rushed and weary, walked in. He had a delicate, handsome face, bearing a slight resemblance to Kaden, but with a more composed and mature aura. Conrad Crestview, the second son of the Crestview family, Kaden's older brother. With the eldest son of the Crestview family's second generation having died young and their father being old, the current head of the family was Conrad. He walked up to his younger brother. Without giving Kaden a chance to speak, Conrad raised his hand and slapped him hard across the face. Slap! The force of the blow sent Kaden sprawling to the floor, his cheeks swelling instantly. Then, the current head of the Crestview group looked at Leo and said politely, I apologize. Leo was sitting at a nearby table. He watched the scene and smiled. Not enough. Without a second thought, Conrad pulled his brother up and slapped him again on the other side of his face. Slap! This time, the blow was even harder. Kaden cried out as he was knocked to the floor again, clutching his face and trembling with pain. Conrad looked at Leo again. Leo's voice was calm. Not enough. And so a third slap. Not enough. A fourth. Not enough. A fifth. Leo smiled and handed him a bottle. Why don't you try this? He suggested helpfully. Conrad didn't even blink. He took the bottle and brought it down hard on his own brother's head. Crash! The bottle shattered and blood splattered. Kaden was nearly knocked unconscious, his head bleeding profusely. Conrad looked at Leo. Any more, and he's done for. Leo nodded, stood up, picked up a bottle, and walked over to Conrad. He raised his hand. The bottle swung in a clean, brutal arc and smashed against the head of the Crestview family's patriarch. The blow made him stagger, and blood slowly trickled down from his head. Leo looked into Conrad's eyes and smiled pleasantly. The younger brother's payment isn't enough. The older brother will have to make up the difference. Conrad stared at the mysterious, inscrutable young man in front of him, suppressing the shock and rage in his heart. Is it enough now? Leo was still smiling, but there was no trace of humor in his eyes. Not enough. Author's note, wow. A supersized chapter. We're almost at the end of this arc, and the next one is the second major climax everyone's been waiting for. I'll be with the wife again tomorrow, so I'll use the time to organize the upcoming plot points. Normal updates will resume the day after tomorrow at noon. By the way, please send some love and gifts. Conrad Crestview was seething with a rage he could barely contain. As the head of the prestigious Crestview family in East Bay, the current chairman of the Crestview Group, his days were a whirlwind of activity. He had just returned from Washington, D.C. this evening after meeting with several influential figures, looking forward to nothing more than a good night's sleep in his lavish penthouse. Then came the disastrous news about his brother's bar. He knew about the shady dealings in the VIP section of Queens. He was also aware of his brother Kaden's plan to use the bar to ensnare a third-generation scion of the Sterling family. He hadn't just tacitly approved. He had offered a few pointers himself. The arrangement to bring Captain Russo of the Jing'an District Criminal Investigation Division in as a shareholder with a 20% stake was also made under his direction. So he had been confident. He trusted his brother Kaden to be thorough and discreet. He trusted in Captain Russo's power and influence in this district. That was why, when he heard that Queens had been raided by the police and everyone had been arrested, he knew something had gone terribly wrong. If even Captain Russo couldn't cover this up, it meant all hell had broken loose. Even so, on his way to the bar, Conrad was still plagued by doubts. He knew his brother Kaden to be cautious and meticulous. He couldn't imagine him offending someone so powerful. Who could it be to act with such brazen, overwhelming force? Before he arrived, Conrad had run through 100 different scenarios in his mind. But as he stepped out his car at Queens and saw a figure being respectfully escorted away by a group of high-ranking police officials, he froze. The insignia on the man's shoulder was stark and piercing under the neon lights of the bar sign. Silver olive branches and 3 four-pointed stars. A first-grade police commissioner. The sight made the Crestview patriarch's pupils shrink. And when he recognized the face of the man wearing the insignia, his heart sank to the icy depths of his stomach. There were only about 10 people in all of East Bay who wore that insignia. Each one was a force to be reckoned with. But to make matters worse, Conrad recognized this particular man as the most powerful of them all, the undisputed head of the entire East Bay police system. Even with his family's standing in the city, even with the connections he had painstakingly cultivated in D.C., the chief of the East Bay police was someone he could not afford to cross. However, while he couldn't afford to cross him, he still had his own network within the police system. As he walked through the VIP corridor of Queens, he made a few calls. Within minutes, he had a rough outline of the situation. He learned that the raid had been sudden, with no prior warning. And the police chief himself had apparently just been in the area to meet someone when he received a call. As the pieces of information came together, the Crestview patriarch's frown deepened, his suspicion growing. Who on earth could command the personal attention of a man like Evan Grant? But regardless of who it was, the damage was done. All he could do now was try to mitigate it. So when Conrad walked into the VIP lounge and saw his brother and the calm figure of a young man sitting at a table, even though he was shocked by the man's youth and the composure that belied his age, he didn't hesitate to slap his own brother across the face. It was a gesture of apology. He just hadn't expected the young man, who seemed even younger than his own brother, to be so unforgiving. 5 slaps, and then making him smash a bottle over his own brother's head. The two Crestview brothers had always been close. Inflicting such pain on his own flesh and blood had already stoked a fire of anger in Conrad's heart. And when the other party still showed no signs of letting up, even walking up and smashing a bottle over his own head, the pain, shock, and rage nearly overwhelmed him. But he still held it in. He forced the words out through gritted teeth. Is it enough now? Anyone who knew Conrad would have recognized that the head of the Crestview family was at his breaking point. The fury radiating from him was palpable. But the young man standing before him merely smiled, his eyes so cold they seemed to freeze the flames of Conrad's rage. Not enough. Their gazes clashed in the air of the VIP lounge. Looking at Conrad, Leo's eyes were devoid of any emotion. Yet his smile seemed to grow warmer like a spring breeze. You're not convinced? The question was polite, almost concerned. But for some reason, meeting Leo's gaze sent a chill down Conrad's spine, creeping up at the back of his neck. After a moment of silence, the chairman of the Crestview Group took a deep breath and nodded. I'm convinced. Then, under Leo's watchful gaze, Conrad grabbed another bottle from a nearby table and, without hesitation, smashed it against his own head. Crash! Then a second one. He swung again. This one didn't break, but the impact made him stagger. Yet, with a blank expression, he gripped the bottle and brought it down on his head once more. As shards of glass flew, cutting several lines on his cheek, the Crestview patriarch looked up at Leo and actually managed to smile. So, does this settle the matter? Even at a moment like this, Conrad, having regained his composure, was still trying to negotiate. Leo shook his head and glanced around. Our matter can be settled. But what your Crestview family has done, that's not settled. Conrad also glanced around, then shook his head dismissively. You're mistaken. This has nothing to do with the Crestview family. From the legal representative to the shareholders, to the hiring of the staff and all the illegal activities, the Crestview family is not involved in any of it. We're clean. He said it with a calm and composed expression, as if he had just effortlessly absolved himself and his semi-conscious brother on the floor of all blame. Conrad looked at Leo and smiled. At worst, we'll have to go to the station and give a statement. It's no big deal. This was the cunning and resourcefulness of the current head of the Crestview group. From the very beginning, he had planned for every contingency, ensuring that everything was airtight, that there was nothing to find. It was a flawless defense, almost enough to make one despair. But Leo just shook his head and corrected him earnestly. It is a big deal. Just then, footsteps approached from the main entrance. Captain Xing strode in, his gaze sharp and authoritative. He looked up and saw a familiar trouble magnet figure. Before his pupils could even start to quake, the person in question, under the stunned gaze of the Crestview patriarch, waved enthusiastically at him. Captain Xing, I'd like to report a crime. Pointing at the bleeding Conrad and the unconscious Kaden on the floor, Citizen Leo Wallace declared with righteous indignation. These two were fighting each other. You have to take them in for questioning. The Crestview brothers had hard heads. One had taken 5 slaps and a bottle to the head. The other had taken 1 bottle, then smashed 2 more on himself. Both were bleeding profusely, a gruesome sight. Yet, somehow they were both still able to stand. Even Kaden, woozy and stumbling, was helped to his feet. Before getting into the police car, Conrad carefully helped his brother into the back seat. Then he turned and gave Leo a long, searching look, his eyes full of confusion. Why? As he had said earlier, he had always been meticulous in his planning, leaving an escape route for himself, his family, and even his brother Kaden. The situation at Queen's seemed dire, but even if it were thoroughly investigated, he was confident that no blame could be traced back to him or his family. Even his brother, who was ostensibly a shareholder and owner, had no legal or evidentiary ties to the bar. At worst, he would be an accomplice with minor liability. There would be ways to smooth it over. And now, this young man was insisting on having them taken to the station on assault charges. Conrad couldn't understand the reason. Was it for revenge? But that seemed so childish, so absurd. In response to Conrad's question, Leo just smiled faintly, his explanation brief. Because I felt like it. The conversation ended there. As the police car drove away with the Crestview brothers, Leo stood in front of the bar and turned to Captain Xing, who was walking toward him. He smiled. Captain Xing, thanks for your trouble. Captain Xing looked Leo up and down, as if he were looking at some kind of deity. The words, "How is it you again?" were stuck in his throat. Instead, he let out a sigh. You kid, you've got some serious pull. Tonight, the entire East Bay police system had been shaken. A single, unexpected phone call from the chief had mobilized several major divisions and the criminal investigation team for a joint operation, all without any warning. And the reason was apparently to stand up for a young student. Leo just smiled and said nothing. Then, remembering something, he looked at Captain Xing and asked, What about that, Lou, I mean? Captain Xing waved a dismissive hand. He's a non-issue now. He couldn't help but sigh with a hint of melancholy. The captain of the Criminal Investigation Division in the most important district of East Bay, a deputy bureau chief, a high-ranking official with a bright future ahead of him, a future far beyond that of a small precinct captain like himself. But because of one wrong turn, one abuse of power for personal gain, it had all come crashing down. It was a shame. Leo nodded. He looked at Captain Xing and suddenly smiled. Well then, I suppose. Congratulations are in order. Captain Xing froze. He seemed to hear something more in Leo's meaningful words. The heart of the veteran, the old police officer of over a decade, suddenly skipped a beat. A feeling of disbelieving, nervous joy began to bloom in his chest. After saying goodbye to Captain Xing, Leo also made a trip to the Jing'an District Police Station. Chloe Chui and Sarah Lin had just finished giving their statements and were walking out. The high school classmates met again on the steps of the police station. Chloe looked at Leo, remembering all the rumors she had heard about him from their old classmates. She couldn't help but exclaim, You really are a magnet for trouble. Leo looked at the two girls, remembering their arrogant pride back in high school, and then their brave defiance in the VIP lounge just a short while ago. He smiled. Thanks for your help. I appreciate it. Chloe puffed out her chest proudly. It was nothing. No one from Northwood High is afraid of a little trouble. Sarah shook her head, a look of shame on her face. We didn't really do anything. Leo smiled. You did more than enough. He glanced at Sarah and added, with objective assessment, short legs, but you run pretty fast. Sarah didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Chloe proudly boasted on her friend's behalf. You bet. Sarah even got second place in the 100-meter dash at the university track meet last year. Leo chuckled. Maybe sometime I'll introduce you to someone who's not so fast. The atmosphere was light and easy, as if the terrifying ordeal of the night had been washed away. Sarah and Chloe said goodbye to Leo and left in a taxi. After the shock, they needed to go back and rest. Before leaving, they said they should get together for a meal sometime. Leo thought for a moment, but didn't agree right away. He'd have to clear it with the wife first. But if he did, he wasn't sure if the kind and magnanimous Bertha Sue would have him murdered. He watched the taxi carrying his 2 former classmates drive away. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Evelyn walking out of the police station. The night air was cold. The lamplight on the steps of the station cast a soft, yellow glow on the mentor and apprentice. They looked at each other in silence. Leo looked at Evelyn's face. The once smooth, fair skin was still swollen on one side, with a faint purplish bruise. Does it still hurt? Evelyn shook her head. It's fine. She tried to smile, but the movement pulled at the wound on her cheek, and she winced, trying to hide the pain. The silence returned. The two of them looked at each other, not knowing what to say. Leo thought for a moment and suggested, "Want to get something to eat?" The spicy spoon. Evelyn instinctively started to refuse. "No, it's okay." But then she paused. The spicy spoon. General Evelyn swallowed hard, her eyes lighting up. "Well, okay." And so, 20 minutes later, the two foodies were sitting in their familiar spot at the spicy spoon, their heads bowed as they devoured their food with gusto. The only problem was that every time Evelyn moved her jaw, the bruise on her cheek throbbed with pain, making it difficult to eat. As a result, a plate of stir-fried pork with peppers was nearly demolished by her scoundrel of an apprentice, leaving her with only the peppers. Evelyn was furious. "You little punk, can't you go easy on me?" The outburst broke the tension, and the atmosphere became light and natural again. Evelyn couldn't help but ask about what had happened earlier. Leo didn't go into detail, just said he knew someone at the police station who happened to be meeting him today and had helped out a little. Of course, that didn't fool Evelyn, but she just nodded and didn't press him. Then, remembering something, she looked at her apprentice. "Graham," Sterling said, "you're part of the Sterling family." Leo smiled. "I guess you could say that." Evelyn nodded again and sighed. No wonder. Then, another thought occurred to her, and she frowned at Leo. That Kaden Crestview. Leo put a piece of meat in his mentor's bowl with his chopsticks and said casually, "Don't worry about him. He's not getting away." It was a full hour before the Crestview brothers were released from the interrogation room. Only then did they get their phones back. But everything was just as Conrad had predicted. For now, there was no concrete evidence linking his younger brother to any of the crimes. It sounded absurd, but it was the arrangement he had made with Kaden from the very beginning. With no evidence, the police had to let them go. Kaden had recovered by now. His face and head were bandaged, making him look pathetic and ridiculous. He thought about what had happened tonight and gritted his teeth in hatred. "Brother, we have to get revenge for this." Conrad almost slapped him again, but seeing his brother's miserable state, he softened. He just shook his head. "Not now. We don't know who that kid is. We need to investigate him first. We'll settle this score later." As he spoke, a cold light glinted in the Crestview patriarch's eyes. To be able to summon Evan Grant himself, that kid was no ordinary person. But his own trip to D.C. had not been fruitless. For the past 6 months, he had been making trips back and forth, and he had finally managed to get in with a very powerful figure. With that connection, even Evan Grant would be no threat to the Crestview family. Then, remembering something, Conrad glanced around to make sure no one was listening and whispered to his brother, "Have you taken care of everything?" Kaden smiled smugly. "Don't worry, brother. They can't pin anything from Queens on me. I've destroyed all the incriminating materials. The most important documents, the contracts from Sterling Holdings, I've distributed them among those 7 factory buildings. They're all under guard. No one can get to them." Conrad nodded, his expression softening slightly. He trusted his brother to be thorough. Kaden's face twisted in anger again. "That bastard Leo. He actually accused us of fighting and had us locked up for an hour. He's just trying to piss us off." Conrad's brow furrowed. He still couldn't understand it. He couldn't figure out what the other party's motive was. What could locking them up for an hour accomplish? So they couldn't use their phones for an hour? A thought suddenly flashed through his mind, and his heart skipped a beat. A sense of foreboding began to rise just as Kaden's phone rang. Kaden answered impatiently. "What?" "I just got out of the damn station. Before he could finish, a frantic, panicked voice came from the other end of the line. Kaden's face instantly changed. Still inside the police station, he couldn't help but cry out in shock. What? That night, 11 secret shell companies and 8 illegal factories under the Crestview group were hit by 2 separate teams. With devastating efficiency, they overwhelmed the guards at each location. One team consisted of only 8 men. The other was a one-man army, as swift as fire, as immovable as a mountain. Woo! Miss me, everyone? Please send some love and gifts. While the streets of East Bay shimmered with the elegant, intoxicating glow of neon lights, another, darker side of the city was unfolding in the shadows, a place untouched by ordinary people. The dozen or so shell companies and factories hidden under the Crestview Group umbrella were all guarded by the family's most loyal men. After the incident with Aegis Construction, the family patriarch, Conrad Crestview, had personally issued another warning, telling everyone to be on high alert and not to make any more mistakes. They had all confidently beaten their chests and sworn that there would be no problems. They sneered at the idea that Aegis Construction's men were anything but useless. The thought of 30 men with knives and clubs being taken down by a mere 7 or 8 people in the Fenwood Old District was a joke. As for the story of Aegis's secret headquarters being single-handedly dismantled by a middle-aged man, that was even more laughably absurd. The Crestview men mocked Aegis's incompetence and boasted, "Let them try that with us." They never thought it would actually happen. On a cold winter night at the end of January, 2 teams, as if acting in concert, struck from opposite ends of the city, one from the east, one from the west. How they knew the locations of the more than a dozen hidden sites where the Crestview Group kept its incriminating evidence was a mystery. Wherever they went, they cut through the defenses with devastating ease, seizing a mountain of evidence, including the Sterling Holdings project contracts and financial reports. At each location, they left behind a scene of moaning and groaning men. Then they vanished into the night, moving on to the next target. The first location, the second, the third, the 2 teams were moving at a remarkably similar pace. But the 8-man team was slightly faster. When a certain retired Special Forces veteran reached the last factory, he kicked down the back door, his knee slamming into a large man and sending him crashing to the ground, unconscious. He then twisted the waist, his shoulder striking another man and sending him flying into a wall. Before he could deal with the remaining men, he heard a series of pained cries and a heavy thud of fists meeting flesh from the other side of a high wall within the factory. The team on the other side of the wall seemed to have heard the commotion as well. Both sides stopped almost simultaneously. Unsure if they were friend or foe, they shouted out cautiously, "Who's on your team? State your name." Using a new trick he had learned from his young master, the veteran unhesitatingly shouted back his alias, James Sterling. He was feeling quite pleased with himself for his quick thinking. But then a response came from the other side. Joe 1, Joe 2, Joe 3, and then a chaotic jumble of Joe 4, 5, 6, 7. The last voice seemed to shout something like Big Joe. James Sterling. The names all sounded strangely familiar. And why the hell were there so many Joes? Late at night, the lights were still on in the market team supervisor's office on the 57th floor of the Global Center Tower. Claire Sterling sat at her desk. The rest of the team, including the team leader, Clark Sterling, stood nearby, watching anxiously as their little miss, Sue, answered the phone. Understood. After listening to the report, Claire nodded. Then she hung up. She looked up at her waiting subordinates. We have the illegal project tenders and contract from Sherman Sterling's side. Prepare to notify the Internal Affairs Department. Coordinate with them to wrap this up. The team members' faces lit up with excitement, and they responded with a chorus of assent. Clark Sterling couldn't hide his excitement either. He knew who his cousin had sent for the job. As expected of Mr. Joe, he had accomplished such a difficult task all by himself. But then, he remembered something and asked cautiously, "What about Graham Sterling's side?" At this question, Claire frowned slightly and shook her head. The contract materials for that part were taken by someone else. According to Mr. Joe, they were friend, not foe. But he didn't know who they were. It was strange. As she was thinking, a team member's phone rang. He quickly stepped into a corner to answer it. After a moment, his face lit up with surprise, and he turned to Claire. "Little Miss Sue, a message from Internal Affairs. They said they just received an email with the digital copies of the 14 project contracts and real financial reports handled by Graham Sterling from the Junha Investment Department. The email said, the physical evidence will be sent over later." A wave of shocked murmurs and excited chatter swept through the team. Now, all the shady dealings of Sherman and Graham Sterling, all the implicated Sterling Holdings projects have been exposed. The company's losses could finally be recovered. At her desk, Claire's expression softened. Mr. Joe was right. They really are friends. But then, the young miss of the Sterling family frowned again. Even if they were friends, where did they come from? Why were they helping Sterling Holdings? The question lingered in her mind until she was driving her Maybach back to her apartment at Rainbow Terrace. As she rode the elevator up and walked into the single slaughterhouse, she was still pondering the problem. Her fat parrot, squawking Queen Mom, flew up to greet her, only to be swatted away. She had no time for the dumb bird. She was still trying to figure out who the mysterious ally was. Hearing a noise from the kitchen, she looked up and saw her boyfriend carrying a bowl of hot porridge out. Seeing her, Leo smiled. Working late again? Claire mumbled a response, took off her heels, and sat down at the dining table. She was still distracted as she started to eat, her mind on the problem. She barely paid attention to the conversation with her boyfriend, just nodding occasionally in response to his casual chatter, until he remembered something and mentioned, "Oh, by the way, I ran into Sarah Lynn today." The previously distracted Bertha Sue instantly snapped to attention, a murderous aura emanating from her. Who? That same night, Evelyn Vance returned to her own apartment, 1203. After a quick wash, she sat at her vanity, carefully examining the bruise on her face in the mirror. She was relieved to see that it should fade in a few days. Then she just stared into the mirror, lost in thought. She thought about the thrilling events of the night at the bar. Graham Sterling, Kaden Crestview, the captain of the Criminal Investigation Division, and everything that had happened afterward. The image of her little apprentice kept flashing in her mind. Evelyn's thoughts drifted. When she was eating with her apprentice at the Spicy Spoon, she had resisted the urge to ask too many questions. In truth, she knew her apprentice had secrets. She remembered Graham Sterling's shocked and panicked expression when he saw him, and the fact that her apprentice had admitted to being part of the Sterling family. No wonder he had gotten an internship at Sterling Holdings as a sophomore. No wonder he'd been able to so easily summon the police as backup. That kid, he was good at hiding things. Evelyn gritted her teeth. Her apprentice playing mind games with his mentor, hiding something so big from her. She would have to teach him a lesson. But then she hesitated. Her apprentice was a Sterling. His background was too powerful. How was she, his mentor, supposed to maintain her authority over him? But then she thought again. So what if her apprentice had a powerful background? She had a powerful backer too. You may be a Sterling, but my backer is Little Miss Sue. The thought immediately put her at ease, her sense of authority restored. Feeling cheerful, Evelyn grabbed a cookie from the box on her table and popped it in her mouth. A handmade cookie from Little Miss Sue herself. After so many days, she could finally taste it properly. Crunch, crunch. It was fragrant and crispy. Little Miss Sue was a good baker. But why did the taste seem so familiar, as if she had just had it recently? Evelyn chewed thoughtfully, a little confused. Not sure. Better have another one. She had eaten more than half the box before she knew it. General Evelyn let out a contented burp and rubbed her stomach. And then, a familiar pain slowly began to spread from her stomach. Evelyn froze. Then, as if realizing something, wait a minute. This cookie. Forgetting the stomachache, General Evelyn's eyes widened. As the clues clicked into place in her clever mind, leading her to a shocking conclusion, her pupils dilated as if hit by a magnitude 12 earthquake. Leo was filled with regret. Why did he have to run his mouth? His girlfriend comes home from work. The two of them are sitting at the dining table, having a nice, warm bowl of porridge, chatting. She was still thinking about work. He should have just let her. Why did he have to go and bring up something else? And of all things, he had to bring up a sensitive topic like Sarah Lynn. Well, now Bertha Sue was no longer distracted. And with her focus back, so was her murderous aura. It took a lot of pleading and swearing, that it was just a chance encounter on a work assignment, that they had exchanged no more than 10 sentences, that there had been absolutely no physical contact, that he had remained pure and chaste, before the young miss of the Sterling family was finally satisfied and retracted her slender fingers. Leo was left rubbing his red, pinched ear and grimacing. So much for peace and reconciliation. To hell with Sarah Lynn. After finally placating his girlfriend, it was getting late. The young couple washed up and snuggled into bed. Leo cautiously sidled up to Bertha Sue. Claire. Claire turned her head away with a huff. Leo scurried over to her other side. Honey. Claire huffed again and turned away, refusing to look at him. The young couple was playing their little game of silent treatment. There is only one way to truly appease an angry girlfriend. Leo suddenly yanked the blanket. With a yelp of surprise, Claire was pulled into his arms. Then, before she could react, he kissed her fiercely. The lights in the master bedroom quietly went out. In the living room, the fat parrot in its cage listened to the sounds of the upgraded friendship vibrating bed, expertly counting the rhythm of the settings. Level 6, Level 7, Level 8, 99999. Halfway through, Reasonable gasped in shock. They're going for broke. They're going for broke. The next morning, the young couple was back to their usual lovey-dovey selves. Sitting at the dining table, Claire, full of energy and in a cheerful mood, generously placed several of her signature fried eggs in her boyfriend's bowl. Across from her, Leo rubbed his sore back and winced as he ate his breakfast. Placating a girlfriend was a technical skill, and a physically demanding one. He had to placate her several times last night. It was a weekend. No work. After breakfast, the master and mistress of the single slaughterhouse comfortably settled onto the living room sofa to watch the news. The East Bay local morning news started promptly at 7. The beautiful anchorwoman immediately launched into a major breaking story. Last night, the East Bay Police Commissioner, Evan Grant, had personally led a surprise raid on Queens in the Jinghan district involving multiple police units. The raid had uncovered evidence of prostitution, drug trafficking, and illegal gambling. Over 100 people were detained, more than $2 million in cash was seized, and over 400 items of unregistered pharmaceuticals were confiscated. Commissioner Evan Grant, in an interview, stated that the operation was a key part of the East Bay Police's end-of-year public safety crackdown, and that they would continue to take a zero-tolerance approach to vice in establishments like bars, resolutely defending the moral and safety bottom line of the people of East Bay. The news report also mentioned a detail. The owner and legal representative of Queens, a Mr. Sue, had been detained for questioning. Another suspect, a Mr. Crestview, who initially seemed unrelated to the case, was later identified through timely intelligence as being deeply involved with the bar and was also promptly arrested. It was worth noting that Mr. Crestview seemed to have been involved in a fight at Queens last night. When he was arrested, he was already bleeding from the head, which had reportedly stunned the officers. Sitting on the sofa, Leo watched with great interest, offering his commentary. Good job. Getting into a fight at a bar. He's clearly not a good person. Arresting him was definitely the right move. Beside him, Claire watched the news with a slight frown, a thoughtful expression on her face. Crestview. The news report wasn't over yet, but Claire received a call. After a few moments, a look of surprise crossed her face. When she hung up, she stood up from the sofa and looked at her boyfriend. Something's come up. I need to go to the office. Leo asked, what's wrong? Claire shook her head and glanced at the TV screen, sighing. The owner of Queens they were just talking about. It's Graham Sterling. Leo was shocked. No way. He righteously declared that this was an outrage, completely unheard of. With the sudden crisis, there was no time for lazing around at home with her boyfriend. Claire changed her clothes, put on her shoes, gave her boyfriend a kiss, and then rushed out with her bag. Leo was left alone in the apartment. The fat parrot had, as usual, flown off to visit some pretty female parrots in the neighborhood. Before Leo could figure out what to do with himself, his phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID. It was Evan Grant. He answered, and the commissioner's hearty voice came through the line. Hey, Leo, my boy. The call was about the Queens case. The account from the head of the East Bay Police was, of course, much more detailed than the news report. According to Evan Grant, the police had made a clean sweep last night, arresting almost everyone involved at the bar. Originally, Graham Sterling was the owner and legal representative, while the true mastermind, Kaden Crestview, was completely in the clear. But then, thanks to the intelligence and evidence gathered by the Joe Squad from Happiness Security Department, the younger Crestview brother had walked out of one interrogation room for assault only to be put right back into another. This time, the evidence was solid. Even though Kaden had been careful not to get too deeply involved, he couldn't escape the law. At the very least, he was looking at a sentence of 15 years or more. It's all thanks to you, my boy. You even handed me a major win on a silver platter. We didn't get to meet up last night, but next time, you come my place, and I'll cook you a good meal myself. Evan Grant was clearly very happy. He was already calling him my boy and treating him like a close friend. Leo smiled and offered a few polite words. Then, remembering something, he asked, by the way, that Conrad Crestview. At the mention of this name, Evan Grant's cheerful tone turned serious. We were originally investigating him as well, but there's no evidence linking him to any of this. As soon as he saw things going south last night, he cut his own brother loose and left. He flew to D.C. overnight. This guy, he's got some skills. Even I've heard whispers that he's been making moves in D.C. Circled for the past 6 months, getting to know some very important people. We couldn't get him this time. You need to be careful of him in the future. Leo nodded. Of the two Crestview brothers, the older one was far more capable and cunning than the younger. The way he had been able to suppress his anger and back down under Leo's pressure last night was a testament to that. After chatting with Evan Grant for a few more minutes, Leo hung up. He thought for a moment, then called his senior. This incident had been a big one, and he figured the police commissioner had probably already reported it, but he felt he should explain it himself as well. The call connected, and the familiar, calm voice came through the line. Leo got straight to the point, giving his senior a detailed account of last night's events. After listening, Zhao Bojun nodded slightly on the other end of the line. East Bay is not a place for filth to hide. You did well. That one sentence was the final verdict on the matter. Then, when Leo mentioned the Crestview group and Conrad Crestview, who had fled to D.C. overnight, the city's top official just chuckled, his tone casual. It's fine. Right is right, and wrong is wrong. Those who do evil can run, but they can't hide forever. You just focus on doing your work, on moving forward. It doesn't matter who it is. Whether it's the Crestview family of East Bay or Conrad Crestview himself, even if he's good at networking, even if he knows some so-called D.C. elites, this is East Bay. As long as you walk the straight and narrow path, no one here can touch you. His tone was calm and reassuring, but the promise he made was as solid as a mountain. Leo was touched. Thank you, senior. Zhao Bojun laughed warmly. No need to thank me. We're family. Leo suggested sincerely. How about I come over to your house to thank you in person sometime soon? The governor politely refused. In your dreams. You're still after my fruit baskets, aren't you, you little rascal? The call ended. Leo put down his phone, disappointed. Damn it. Plan foiled again. Daily request for love and gifts. With his girlfriend off to the office, Leo found himself at home with nothing to do. After hanging up with his senior, he was still a bit disappointed. He had been thinking of paying a visit over the weekend to express his sincere gratitude, but his senior had shot him down. The top official of East Bay, guarding against his own junior like he was a thief. He was, after all, the CSO of Happy Nest, worth hundreds of millions. It wasn't like he was really after a fruit basket or two. But since his brilliant plan had failed, he was truly bored. He opened up the group chat for the single slaughterhouse to see what was going on. Everyone seemed to be having a great time on their winter break. The date cake guy and the novel girl were having a blast at Leon's home in Shandong, and Molly Tang was flooding the chat with photos and exclamations. Wow, everyone here is so tall. Even the scallions are taller than me. You won't believe it. The bus driver almost didn't charge me for a ticket. Quinn Liu and Marco Shaw were still in Portland. Kevin Zhao and Tessie Yuan had planned to go back to Northwood for the break, but they had made plans with Quinn and Marco, so they stayed in Portland for a while longer. The two couples were having the time of their lives, spamming the group chat with endless couple photos and group selfies, nearly maxing out everyone's data plans. When asked about their trip, Tessa and Quinn were enthusiastic. It's great. Tessa and I have been exchanging a lot of husband-taming tips. I'm going to try them out on Marco Shaw later. The comment sent a shiver down the spines of the other men in the group. Kevin Zhao at Marco Shaw. You're welcome. Marco Shaw. Cracking. Geef, saveme. Dylan had gone home. Before he left, he had proudly declared that he would talk to at least a certain number of girls during the break. But in just 2 short weeks, his bold declarations had devolved into incoherent ramblings, and now he was completely silent in the chat. When asked how things were going, he would only reply with a series of ellipses. He had entered a state of social seclusion. The others had seen it coming. They shook their heads and offered their condolences. It's okay, Dylan. Just keep practicing your vow of silence. Being the Hokage is not so bad. The village needs you. As for the other single person, Jay Jiang, the academic superstar, was having a leisurely and fulfilling break. She didn't chat much, but she would occasionally post a series of photos she had taken with her new camera of nature and cultural landscapes. Her photography skills had reached a professional level, good enough to win awards. The group was full of praise. Finally, the topic turned to the resident power couple. They asked about Leo and Claire's work during the break. Leo thought for a moment. There wasn't much to say about work. It was mostly just fetching water at the office, beating up bad guys after hours, and making out with his girlfriend in his spare time. A very peaceful life. Before he could reply, Kevin Zhao popped up again. By the way, Leo, I heard from a Northwood High alumni group a couple of days ago that Sarah Lynn and Chloe Chui are also in East Bay. The comment immediately revived the group. Sarah Lynn? Most of them had never met her, but her name was legendary. Leo casually typed a reply. Yeah, I know. I ran into them a couple of days ago. The chat instantly exploded with questions and gossip. But when Leo nonchalantly explained that it was just a chance encounter, they had barely exchanged 10 sentences, the gossip mongers were sorely disappointed. Damn it, this tea is weak. Not juicy enough. Kevin, ever the instigator, came up with a brilliant idea, eagerly trying to stir up trouble. He suggested that Leo meet up with Sarah Lynn again to see if he could create some more entertainment for their boring break. The others enthusiastically agreed, flooding the chat with +1. And then, a certain someone who was supposed to be at the Sterling Holdings office made an appearance in the chat. She posted a message, or rather a sticker. It was a custom-made sticker of her own photo. In it, she was holding a book of poetry and smiling at the camera. The meaning was simple and clear. Y'all want to die? In an instant, the chat fell silent. Kevin, sweating profusely, typed a shaky message. Aha, you guys chat, my mom is having another baby. The next second, his profile picture went gray as he logged off in a hurry. Us too. Later, the others followed suit, vanishing in an instant. Bertha Sue had a short fuse. Don't mess with her. Run. Leo closed the group chat and glanced at the Happiness work chat. It was the weekend, so it was mostly just idle chatter and sticker battles. Some people were talking about the local news from this morning, about the bar in the Jingen district that had been shut down. Others were sharing rumors they had heard about a dozen or so factories in East Bay being raided by a mysterious group last night, and how those factories were supposedly connected to the owner of Queens. The male employees were excitedly discussing the details. The female employees were expressing their concern, saying that East Bay wasn't as safe as they thought. Then they expressed their relief that their own company had a dedicated security department. They felt so safe. Shun Shur and the other veterans from the security department also chimed in, righteously condemning the late-night raids. They then solemnly declared that with them around, the company was absolutely safe. A moment later, Leo received a private message from Shun Shur. Mr. Wallace, next time you have a job for us, just say the word. We're on call 24/7. He was clearly eager for more action. Leo smiled and asked about the details of last night's operation, checking on his men's safety. Shun Shur replied cheerfully that it was a piece of cake. He did mention that at the last factory, they had run into another team, or rather a one-man team, and he was incredibly skilled. Although it was dark and they couldn't see his face, he exuded an aura of calm confidence. He was definitely a top-tier operator. Shun Shur's words were full of admiration. The more Leo heard, the more familiar it sounded. And when he asked for more details and heard that the man had introduced himself as James Sterling, he could only reply with a series of ellipses. That sealed it. It had to be the retired Special Forces veteran. Then, remembering something, Leo quickly typed another question, just to be sure. You guys didn't expose yourselves, right? Shun Shur replied cheerfully, Don't worry. We did exactly as you instructed. We all used the codenames Joe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Oh, by the way, I was Big Joe. Leo. It was a case of the fake running into the real deal. Or rather, 8 fakes running into the real deal. Work had been so busy lately that he'd barely had a chance to log into AIM. The moment he did, a flood of messages arrived. He had just closed the Happiness Company group chat when Isabella Zhao, from Mako Entertainment, messaged him, Boss, I finished all the sketches, take a look. Attached was a compressed file. Leo opened it and scanned through the contents. Isabella's efficiency was truly impressive, especially when motivated by overtime pay and supervised by Yvonne. He had only recently tasked her with designing a new batch of parent-child and kid-friendly blockhead figures, and it was incredible that she had finished in just over a week. Moreover, every single design was top-notch. They were exactly the kind of figures little kids would love. Considering Isabella's often dazed intellect, it was perfectly reasonable that she could get on the same wavelength as children. Leo typed out a reply, telling her the designs were approved. On the other end of the chat window, Isabella was ecstatic. She asked if this meant she could finally take a vacation. The work was done, after all. Employees deserve some time off. Leo thought for a moment, nodded, and typed OK. The message had just been sent. At that exact moment, Potato, the author of Battle Through the Heavens, messaged him. Potato was here to thank him. Scrollverse had recently tried to back out of their IP rights agreement for Battle Through the Heavens, escalating the matter to a lawsuit against Mako Entertainment. Leo had simply made a call to Mr. Hayes, the governor's chief of staff. The effect was immediate and decisive. The lawsuit never even made it to the city court. Scrollverse was bombarded with calls from various departments, getting hammered from all sides until they were completely dazed. In the end, they didn't dare make another peep. They meekly surrendered and returned the IP rights. Potato was thrilled just talking about it. For an author, getting the rights to their own work back was more important than anything. He knew it was all thanks to Leo. His admiration and gratitude for his friend, who he considered a true confidant, grew even stronger. Then, Potato shared another piece of good news. A few of the other big-name authors I'm close with heard that I was working with you to develop my IP, and they're really interested. They have the rights to their own works, too, and they're willing to let us develop them without any upfront cost. We can just sort out the profit sharing based on the revenue later. Leo's eyes lit up. This was indeed fantastic news. First, the model for the Battle Through the Heavens browser game had already proven successful. Adapting other popular web serials for browser games would be as simple as changing the visual assets. This model could be endlessly replicated, guaranteeing a steady cash cow for at least the next year or two. Second, if Mako's blockhead figures were to expand and increase their brand recognition, they needed to collaborate with well-known IPs. Negotiating with major foreign IPs from anime and film would take time. So, starting with domestic web serial IPs was the perfect strategy. They might not have the same value as Disney or Marvel, but there were plenty of them, and their value would only increase over time. Having made his decision, Leo got a list of available web serials from Potato. He switched his chat window back to Isabella Zhao. He sent a message to the Days Girl. New assignment. Go through these novels. I need you to design a few sketch concepts for the main characters and important supporting roles in each one. On the other end of the chat window, Isabella was stunned. Huh. Wait, boss, you just said I could go on vacation. Leo suddenly remembered the okay he had just sent in response to her request. He thought for a moment. With nimble fingers, he selected his reply and hit the retract button. The message vanished from the chat window with a soft swoosh. The black-hearted capitalist, Leo Hammer Wallace, typed without a hint of shame on his face. You saw wrong. Isabella Zhao. A new week began. At the Sterling Holdings division, employees were whispering and trading gossip at their desks first thing in the morning. The news was out. Corporate headquarters had brought the axe down again. Sherman Sterling, a family elder and a relative of the chairman, had been dismissed and turned over to the police for criminal investigation. At the same time, his grandson, Graham Sterling, had apparently used his grandfather's name and his own position as deputy manager of the Junha Investment Department to approve projects worth over $100 million. Fortunately, Little Miss Sue had acted with lightning speed and decisiveness. She had managed to recover all the bidding contracts and financial evidence. As for Graham Sterling, his luck had run out. The bar he co-owned was reportedly raided by the police over the weekend, and, as the legal representative, he was arrested on the spot. Though other evidence later proved he wasn't the main culprit, even an accessory charge was enough to land him in prison for 3 to 5 years. Back at the company, Little Miss Sue and the chairman had been merciful and didn't kick him while he was down. Otherwise, the charge of illicitly granting contracts worth hundreds of millions would have added another few years to his sentence. Leo didn't care about these minor bits of gossip. Right now, he was staring curiously at Evelyn Vance. Evelyn, how are you late again? The weekend had passed. The bruising on the general's face had mostly faded, and with a bit of makeup, it was practically invisible. But even the foundation couldn't hide her pale, weak complexion. When she returned to her desk, she was clutching her stomach, looking like she was on her last breath. Upset stomach again, Leo guessed, then lectured her with a grave tone. You're a grown woman. You can't just eat whatever. Evelyn almost exploded with rage. You little brat, this is all your damn fault. Twice. She'd gotten sick twice, and both damn times, it was because of those cookies. Furious, the general reflexively raised her hand to smack her little apprentice on the head. Halfway through the motion, she suddenly remembered what she had just discovered about her apprentice's relationship with Little Miss Sue. She slammed on the brakes, changing direction mid-swing. Losing her balance, she ended up slapping the partition of the adjacent cubicle. Wham! The impact nearly brought tears to Evelyn's eyes. Leo looked at his mentor, completely baffled. You okay, mentor? Who randomly slaps a cubicle wall to vent? Did the bad food mess with her head, too? Evelyn swallowed her pain. I'm fine. Just then, a member of the marketing team for Division 3 walked through the open plan office and called out to Evelyn. Evelyn, time to report in. Oh, right, bring your intern with you. Report in? Leo was confused and turned to look at his mentor. Evelyn took a deep breath, her face a mask of grim determination. Let's go. A few moments later, Division 3, Marketing Team Supervisor's office. Claire Sterling sat at her desk, staring dumbfounded at Leo Hammer Wallace, the intern standing next to Evelyn. The intern, Leo Hammer Wallace, was also staring dumbfounded at his girlfriend sitting behind the desk. The young couple stared at each other. Leo? Question mark. Claire? Question mark. Their eyes met, and the mini versions of the lethal and savage couple had a frantic mental conversation. What are you doing here? Yeah, what am I doing here? Claire turned to Evelyn, her voice uncertain. Where's your intern? Evelyn awkwardly wrung her hands, forcing a smile. My apprentice. It's him. Leo. Claire. And just like that, it all clicked. His mentor's supervisor was his girlfriend. Her subordinate's apprentice was her boyfriend. Claire didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This was a bit too much of a coincidence. Speaking of coincidences, on the 65th floor of the East Bay Global Financial Center, a new company was moving in today. The recently launched perfume line had been a massive success, with sales soaring. Arya Perfumes had made a fortune, and the entire company was buzzing with excitement. Every employee involved in the project received a bonus. As if that wasn't enough good news, the employees learned that the company was officially relocating, moving into the East Bay Global Financial Center. They would get to enjoy a brand new, high-end office environment. Right now, on the 65th floor, the employees of Arya Perfumes were joyfully moving their office supplies, picking out their new desks and offices, and excitedly looking around. They gazed out at the stunning high-altitude view, absolutely blown away. They couldn't stop praising their boss, the great young Master Wei, who had made such a decision. Only Anna looked suspiciously at the heir of the Wei family. For this little bit of performance, you moved the entire company. It felt like a massive overreaction. Wyatt Wei put on a righteous expression. The project was a success, and everyone contributed. After all that hard work, moving the company is a perfectly reasonable reward. Look at this office, this panoramic view. In an environment like this, everyone will be more motivated to work. In reality, the third-generation heir of the Wei family was about to burst with joy. Who cared about the office environment? What was so great about a panoramic view? The key was the elevators. 2 rows, 8 elevators on every floor. Every single one was brand new and sparkling. Every single one had a security camera operating 24/7. From now on, no more beatings. The thought alone brought tears to the young master's eyes. He had waited so long. He had finally made it to this day. The hard times were over. From now on, Annie Cakes couldn't beat him up, and Claire the demoness worked far away at Sterling Holdings. The good life, for Wyatt Wei, had finally begun. East Bay Global Financial Center, 57th floor. Inside the office of the marketing team supervisor for Sterling Holdings Division 3. The entire team was assembled. Today, there were 2 new members, Evelyn Vance and an intern. Standing before Little Miss Sue at her desk, the division's elite team members stood ramrod straight, their gazes fixed forward. But they couldn't help but steal furtive glances at the 2 newcomers. They gave the intern a quick look and moved on. They had a vague impression of him. He seemed hardworking enough out in the open-plan office, always helping the senior staff get water and coffee. He practically drowned guys. In fact, since he started, everyone's trips to the bathroom had increased by at least 50%. But that wasn't important. The focus was on Evelyn Vance. As they stole glances at the stunning beauty, the team members were practically bursting with joy. Evelyn Vance. She was widely acknowledged as the #1 beauty in their entire Sterling Holdings division. The line of suitors was long enough to stretch from the 1st floor to the 57th, yet none of them could get close. General Vance was either completely focused on her work, running around on assignments, or conquering the cafeteria, which made her even harder to catch. Her long legs carried her through the cafeteria like she was Usain Bolt. And now, this gorgeous woman was a member of their team. If nothing else, at least they'd have a beautiful colleague to look at every day. That alone was a huge plus. While the team members were sneaking peeks at Evelyn, Claire was sizing up her capable subordinate from her past life. She never would have imagined. The little intern apprentice that the future director Vance often spoke of was actually her own boyfriend. A one-on-one mentorship. That was a closer relationship than most. She thought about how her boyfriend had mentioned eating lunch and going out on assignments with his mentor every day. The time they spent together was more than the time he spent with her, his girlfriend. The Sterling family's heiress had always been broad-minded. She wasn't the jealous type, especially since the woman in front of her had been her most trusted subordinate in her past life. She couldn't bring herself to do it personally. She looked at Evelyn again. Claire mused thoughtfully. Maybe I should have Mr. Joe handle this. Despite the warm air conditioning in the office, everyone present suddenly felt a collective shiver run down their spines. They looked around, bewildered. Why did it suddenly feel so cold? Only Leo, who vaguely sensed something was off, remained expressionless. He discreetly took a step back, putting a little more distance between himself and Evelyn. He didn't want to get hit by the shrapnel. She had been a trusted subordinate in her past life. After all, Claire magnanimously decided not to pursue the matter for now. She collected her thoughts and got down to business. With the team fully assembled, there were many new tasks to assign. The company-wide audit was now proceeding with little resistance, having already weeded out family pests like Sherman and Graham Sterling. But it wasn't enough. Sterling Holdings was too massive. Among the dozens, even hundreds, of remaining projects, there were bound to be more false accounts and errors. Following Claire's instructions, the team would continue their review of these projects, determined not to miss a single mistake. Most of the team members had been working under Little Miss Sue for over half a month and were familiar with her style. They immediately straightened up, their expressions serious as they acknowledged her orders. Evelyn also shook off her earlier nervousness. Nodding forcefully, her spirit reinvigorated. As a new member of the team, she was determined to work hard and prove her worth. Everyone was fired up, except for one Leo Hammer Wallace, who was busy admiring his girlfriend's professional demeanor, TSK. Bertha Sue looked so cool when she was serious about work. Her alpha female aura was off the charts, as expected of the woman of the Wallace family. After the tasks were assigned and everyone was ready to leave, filled with ambition, Claire remembered something else. "By the way," she said, "since the whole team is here today, let's have lunch together in the cafeteria. It'll be our first team meal. My treat." Her tone was casual, and she added offhandedly, "Oh, the intern can come too." The team members' faces lit up with surprise. Little Miss Sue was inviting them to lunch for the first time? What an incredible honor! Overjoyed, the team members shot a sideways glance at the intern Leo. This kid must have some incredible luck. He gets to eat with Little Miss Sue on his very first day. He was clearly just riding their coattails. Lucky him. Ignoring the intern, the team members immediately showered their boss with a torrent of free compliments. Some dramatically claimed they were already starving and wished it were lunchtime right now. That comment actually reminded Claire of something. "If you're hungry, I have some cookies here. You can share them." She casually pulled a container from her drawer and generously offered it. The team members were overjoyed. "Thank you, Little Miss Sue." Leo's face suddenly changed. He turned to run. I'm not hungry. I'm pretty full today." Evelyn's pupils dilated in terror as she backed away. I'm not hungry either. I wouldn't want to take any from you guys." As for a certain intern, Leo Hammer Wallace, he had sensed danger the moment the first word left his girlfriend's mouth. Without a second thought, he vanished. When lunchtime arrived, the plan had been for the entire marketing team to have a celebratory meal in the public cafeteria downstairs. But for some unknown reason, most of the team members were suddenly suffering from gastrointestinal distress. They were currently occupying the restrooms and would be delayed for a while. "They're probably just nervous about eating with you. They need to use the restroom to calm down," Leo explained to his girlfriend. Claire thought about it and nodded in agreement. Reasonable. With everyone else indisposed, the elevator was occupied by just Supervisor Sue and her intern, Leo. They could finally switch back to their lethal and savage couple mode. As the elevator doors were about to close, Claire looked at her boyfriend, raised an eyebrow, and leaned in with a playful smile. "We haven't kissed yet today." She was about to generously demand a kiss. Just then, a hurried voice yelled from outside the elevator. Wait, hold it for me. It's urgent." Even from a distance, you could hear the desperate craving for cafeteria food in that voice. The next second, a figure zipped up to the elevator doors. The doors slowly slid open again, revealing Evelyn Vance. At that moment, the lethal and savage couple inside the elevator hadn't kissed yet, but they were mere inches apart. The air froze. The scene was a perfect tableau. The couple and the foodie stared at each other from inside and outside the elevator. Evelyn was dumbstruck. She swallowed hard. Claire looked at her former trusted subordinate from her past life, standing outside the elevator doors. She was a trusted subordinate, but that was in a last life, anyway. Maybe I should just get rid of her in this life. Evelyn felt like she could die. If this had been before she knew, seeing her apprentice brazenly sharing an elevator with Little Miss Sue, she would have smacked him on the head and dragged him out by the ear. Well, why did he have to be in the same elevator as Little Miss Sue? But things are different now. Now she knew about her apprentice's relationship with Little Miss Sue, and she was probably one of the very few people in the entire company who knew. She had been determined to play dumb, but her rush to the cafeteria had led her right into this. What was she supposed to do? Evelyn subconsciously wanted to retreat. "You know what? This elevator is too crowded. You two go ahead, I'll wait for the next one." This was a classic rookie lie. The excuse was laughably bad. An elevator that could easily fit a dozen people, and she was calling it crowded with only 2 inside. Claire also felt it was inappropriate. She naturally stepped away from her boyfriend and spoke with a cool, authoritative air. "No need. Let's go down together." Little Miss Sue had spoken. Evelyn could only step inside, trembling with a stiff upper lip. As the elevator doors slowly closed and began their descent, the atmosphere inside grew even quieter and more bizarre. Evelyn shrank into a corner, staring up at the ceiling, trying her best not to look at the couple. The mighty General Vance was now small, weak, and helpless. She didn't dare look, terrified of seeing something even more scandalous. Although, given Little Miss Sue's magnanimity, she probably wouldn't do anything even if her secret was discovered. But for a subordinate to stumble upon their superior's secret was still a major workplace taboo. Evelyn chanted inwardly, "I can't see anything, I can't see anything. I see nothing. Wow, this light is really light. But the more she tried, the more unnatural she seemed. Leo hadn't noticed anything yet. He just thought his mentor was feeling sick from her upset stomach. But Claire sensed something was off. She frowned slightly. After a moment's thought, she deliberately moved a step closer to her boyfriend. The scene was perfectly reflected in the elevator's semi-transparent walls, right into the eyes of Evelyn, who had her back to them. General Vance's pupils trembled violently. "Must control myself," Claire noticed. She arched an eyebrow and nonchalantly looped her arm through her boyfriend's. Seeing this live broadcast via the elevator wall, Evelyn's body nearly jolted and her eyes widened in shock. Leo was startled too. He lowered his voice to his girlfriend. "Hey, someone's here." Claire already understood, a faint smile playing on her lips. "It's fine." Then her gaze fell on Evelyn, her tone casual. "You know, don't you?" Evelyn continued to stare at the ceiling, refusing to turn her head, shaking it frantically like a drum. I don't know anything." The oblivious Leo looked back and forth between his girlfriend and his mentor, completely puzzled. "Know what?" Claire, exasperated, playfully smacked her boyfriend's head. "You pig, it's about us, of course." Then she turned back to her subordinate. "How'd you find out?" She completely ignored Evelyn's denial, clearly certain she knew the truth. Seeing that she couldn't hide it any longer, Evelyn finally turned around, forcing a trembling smile. It was just a coincidence. It's just that before. I ate your cookies. And last time, I ate the cookies from Leo's girlfriend." With that explanation, Leo understood immediately. A look of realization dawned on his face. "So that's how." Claire was still a bit curious. "You could tell just from the cookies. Is my recipe that recognizable?" This time, both Leo and Evelyn nodded in unison. "Very. No human chef could replicate such a unique flavor." As a subordinate, Evelyn didn't forget to flatter her. "They were so delicious. Once you've had them, you'll never forget." Claire nodded, satisfied, accepting the explanation. "As long as they're delicious. I'll make you some more later." Having made this generous decision, she didn't forget the important matter at hand. She turned to her subordinate with a word of caution. "This needs to stay a secret. Not many people in the company know, so don't spread it around." Evelyn naturally nodded vigorously, swearing she would never tell a soul. But she mustered the courage to try and refuse the cookies, only to lose her nerve at the last second. Her heart sank. This is bad. Little Miss Sue is still planning to silence me, after all. The elevator reached the public cafeteria on the 6th floor. Just as they were getting out, Claire's phone rang. It was the company's inspection department. She stepped aside to take the call, waving for Leo and Evelyn to go get their trays first. The mentor and apprentice walked towards the cafeteria side by side, just like old times. Leo looked at his mentor with renewed respect. "Evelyn, you're incredible." Twice in less than a week. She had eaten Bertha Sue's handmade cookies 2 separate times, and finished them all in one go each time. Yvonne and Mr. Chien were natural-born freaks of nature. They could eat any amount without being affected and would even ask for more. But General Vance had achieved sainthood through sheer physical effort. Evelyn almost choked. "Incredible, my ass. This is all your fault." She reflexively raised her hand to smack the little brat on the head again. Then she remembered that this person was Little Miss Sue's boyfriend, the son-in-law of the Sterling family. She froze mid-motion once more. The strain nearly caused her internal damage. Damn it, this was torture. She couldn't even smack her apprentice anymore. Leo saw Evelyn's conflicted expression and said with a chuckle, "It's fine. We can keep things separate. You're Claire's subordinate, and I'm still your apprentice. Nothing has to change." Evelyn could feel the sincerity in his words, and her heart warmed slightly. She couldn't help but glance sideways at her apprentice. "You little brat, hiding this from me. Don't do it again. At first, she thought he was just some kid in turn. Then it turned out he was a Sterling. Just as she accepted that, she found out the next head of the Sterling family was his girl. Leo nodded righteously. Absolutely. I'll never hide anything from you again. As they were talking, two Happy Nest employees walked past with their trays. They saw Leo and were about to say something. Little. Then they saw Evelyn next to him and quickly corrected themselves. Fellow, where's the food line? Leo pointed towards the restrooms without batting an eye. Oh, over there. The two Happy Nest employees thanked him and, being quick on the uptake, scurried away. Evelyn was amazed. Hey, weren't they from Happy Nest? I feel like I've been seeing a lot of Happy Nest employees asking you for directions lately. Leo's expression didn't change. Have you? Must be a coincidence. Evelyn nodded in agreement. Reasonable. There really was no other explanation. It was already outlandish enough that her little brat of an apprentice had managed to land a girlfriend like Little Miss Sue. How could he possibly have any connection to Happy Nest? Her two idols were Little Miss Sue and the CSO of Happy Nest. Was this kid trying to collect them all? A short while later, Claire finished her call and joined them. The other members of the marketing team also started trickling down to the public cafeteria. Once everyone had arrived, they prepared to get their food. A few of the male team members were eagerly volunteering to get some of the cafeteria's signature dishes for Little Miss Sue. Before they could even speak, Evelyn let out a spirited cry. Anna was already expertly cracking her knuckles. This way guy was asking for it again. From the 6th floor cafeteria to the 65th floor Arya Perfumes office, there was plenty of time to teach him a good lesson. Mentally plotting 100 different ways to punish him, Anna cheerfully walked up to an elevator whose doors hadn't closed yet. As she was about to step in, she looked up and saw two familiar figures standing inside. Her face went blank. Leo. Claire. Anna. Oh, degree. The couple was a bit surprised. Any cakes? What are you doing here? Anna hadn't even processed what was happening. The next moment, footsteps approached from behind, accompanied by the exuberant voice of a certain third-generation heir of the Wei family. Don't rush. I'm not in the elevator yet. The mighty young Master Wei made his grand entrance, swaggering with an air of invincibility. The next second, inside and outside the elevator, for people were staring at each other, for dumbfounded faces. A certain third-generation heir of the Wei family froze mid-stride. He gaped at the lethal and savage couple inside the elevator. Wyatt Wei, degree. The scene at the elevator doors was wonderfully bizarre. For people, the lethal and savage couple and the coincidence couple, none of whom expected to run into each other here. Anna was the first to break the silence, her face a mask of confusion. Sister-in-law, you and Leo the pig. Don't you work at Sterling Holdings? Leo and Claire exchanged a look and nodded generously. We do. Sterling Holdings Division. It's right here in the Global Center on the 57th floor. Sterling Holdings Division. Right? Here. Anna, Wyatt Wei. Oh, degree. Both of them felt like their brains were short-circuiting. Leo and Claire looked at them strangely and asked Anna the same question. They remembered Annie Cakes worked at Arya Perfumes. So what was she doing at the Global Financial Center? Anna's mouth twitched. Oh, our company. Moved. We just got here to... This was an answer the lethal and savage couple hadn't expected. After a stunned moment, Claire beamed with delight. She and her best friend/sister-in-law were already close. She had tried to get Anna to come work with her at Sterling Holdings, but it hadn't worked out. Now that her company had moved into the same building, they would have plenty of opportunities to see each other. Leo, on the other hand, was amazed. Moving to the Global Center. Your boss is pretty generous. The East Bay Global Financial Center was currently the most high-end office building in East Bay, if not the country, or even all of Asia. Not just any company could set up shop here, and those that could often couldn't afford the exorbitant rent. Hearing Leo's words, Anna's mouth twitched even more violently. Yeah, our boss is so generous. She shot a sideways glance at the third-generation heir of the Wei family. The last part of her sentence was practically squeezed through gritted teeth. Her working at the same company as Punching Bag Wei was supposed to be a secret. She was worried that if their other friends found out, it would lead to misunderstandings, especially her brother and sister-in-law. Well, so much for that. She had been so careful, hiding it for so long, only to walk right into the enemy's base. Anna felt her fists clenching again. Wyatt Wei didn't even notice Anna's murderous glare. He was already completely numb. His head was buzzing. He felt like two giant words were floating above him. Holy shit, who could have possibly imagined this? He had painstakingly waited for the company's product to be a success, found a perfect, reasonable excuse to celebrate by moving to the East Bay Global Financial Center. All for the sake of shiny new elevators and functioning security cameras, just to avoid a few beatings. But now, it looked like his chances of getting beaten were about to double. His good life sprouted wings and wobbled away. The third-generation heir of the Wei family felt the world go dark. The sky was falling. Just then, Leo and Claire's attention shifted to Wyatt. If Anna's company moved here. Punching bag, what are you doing here too? Wyatt hadn't yet recovered from the grief of his plan going up in smoke. Hearing the question, he subconsciously started to answer. Oh, I'm also. Before he could finish, an intensely murderous gaze shot towards him like a dagger. A shiver ran down young Master Wei's spine. He snapped back to reality and abruptly changed his tune. I just came to see you two. The lethal and savage couple looked puzzled. See us. Under the death glare of a certain Annie Cakes, the third-generation heir of the Wei family nodded vigorously, like a garlic-pounding pestle. Yes. I mean, you two have been working at Sterling Holdings for over half a month now. As your brother and best friend, it's perfectly reasonable for me to come visit. I didn't tell you on purpose to give you a surprise. How about it? Aren't you surprised? Ha ha. He forced out a laugh that sounded more painful than a cry. Leo and Claire looked at each other. After a moment's thought, they nodded agreeably. Reasonable. As the four of them chatted, the elevator slowly ascended, reaching the 57th floor, home to the Sterling Holdings division. When the doors opened, Leo and Claire stepped out. Claire turned to Anna, intending to invite her best friend/sister-in-law over for a visit. But Anna waved her hands frantically, saying she had to get to work soon, but they could meet up later. She wasn't getting out of the elevator. But while Annie Cakes wasn't getting out, young Master Wei was already enthusiastically trying to follow them. It's fine. If Anna's not coming, I'll come visit. I've never seen the Sterling offices before. Gotta see the world today. Ha ha. His hearty laugh was cut short. A slender, fair hand grabbed the back of Punching Bag Wei's neck. Anna smiled sweetly as she dragged Wyatt back into the elevator. Little Wei isn't going either. He said he wants to visit my company first. Sister-in-law, we'll catch up later. The elevator doors slowly closed. Faintly, they could hear the mournful cry of the third-generation heir of the Wei family. Bro, help me. I'll renew my annual pass. Leo and Claire stood in front of the elevators, looking at each other. Leo consulted his girlfriend. What now? Claire thought for a moment. Back to my office to handle some work. Positive, productive work. Discussing serious projects like strawberry cultivation and daily intimacy sessions. The young couple happily reached an agreement. Without a backward glance, they turned and walked away. Inside the elevator, only Anna and Wyatt Wei remained. The atmosphere was quiet, a quiet tinged with a few wisps of murderous intent. Anna thought for a moment, then casually pressed the button for the 79th floor. Wyatt was confused. Our company is on the 65th floor. The 79th floor is the Park Hyatt. Why are you pressing that? Anna patiently explained to Wyatt. Going to the 65th floor is too short. Not enough time. Wyatt shivered. He met the beautiful, smiling but not smiling face of Annie Cakes. The third-generation heir of the Wei family subconsciously backed away until he hit the wall. You don't do anything crazy. This elevator has cameras. Brand new cameras. As if he had found a savior, Wyatt eagerly pointed to the security camera above his head and then burst into a triumphant laugh. With the camera here, let's see what you can do. Anna looked up. She saw the camera in the corner of the elevator ceiling. She thought for a moment. Unlike her sister-in-law's throat-slitting threats, Misson flashed the camera a bewitching, devastatingly beautiful smile. Her eyes sparkled, and she looked utterly charming as she clashed her hands together. Mr. Cameraman, could you please turn away for a moment? As she gestured, under the almost stupefied gaze of a certain third-generation heir of the Wei family, the impartial security camera slowly swiveled away. Wyatt gulped. When he looked up again, he saw a certain Annie Cakes cracking her knuckles and advancing towards him with ill intent. Now, it's just the two of us. The afternoon at the Sterling Holdings division was calm and uneventful. Intern Leo Hammer Wallace, now benefiting from his mentor's position, trotted along after General Vance, joining Division 3's marketing team. Along with the other elite team members, he stood respectfully in the office, receiving instructions from Little Miss Sue, diligently learning her work policies and guiding principles. Leo listened with particular focus. Wow, that work policy is so fair. And that guiding principle is so long and slender. The other team members beside him shot the new intern hostile looks. What the hell is this kid doing? Everyone else is listening respectfully. But you, an intern, have no sense of propriety. If you're going to listen, listen properly. How do you keep staring at little Miss Sue's legs? Truly audacious. But Supervisor Sue, sitting at her desk, seemed completely oblivious. She continued to give her instructions with a cool expression and a calm tone. Only when her peripheral vision caught her little fool did the corner of her mouth curve into an almost imperceptible smile. She elegantly shifted her posture, giving her boyfriend a better angle to admire her long legs. No one else noticed this except for Leo and Evelyn Vance. The two insiders had enough composure to maintain their calm expressions. They just seemed to lower their heads a bit more respectfully, trying to hide the frantic twitching in their eyes. Of course, some were twitching even more. When the short meeting ended, Claire casually instructed the others to return to their desks, then offhandedly told the intern to stay behind for individual instruction. Evelyn was the last one out. As she closed the door, her peripheral vision inevitably caught a glimpse of a certain intimate scene that made her pupils dilate. General Vance closed the door, her eyes wide with shock. She turned around and nearly bumped into someone. She then realized that the head of their division, Mr. Young, had appeared at the door at some point. He didn't seem to be planning on going in. He stood frozen, holding a small notebook, his eyes also twitching violently. Evelyn was startled and asked with concern, "Director, are you all right?" Mr. Young snapped back to reality, trying to compose himself. I'm fine," but his gaze kept drifting back towards the office. Evelyn's mind raced. She looked at Mr. Young and carefully chose her words to probe. "Do you happen to know something?" Mr. Young immediately and righteously denied it. I don't know anything." But then he paused, looking suspiciously at Evelyn. "Do you know something?" Evelyn was equally righteous. "Don't make wild accusations. I don't know anything either." The current and future directors of the Sterling Holdings division looked at each other with suspicion. They couldn't help but recall the scenes from the office just now. Involuntarily, their eyes twitched in unison. It was a feeling that seemed to be passed down through the generations. When work ended that evening, the lethal and savage couple had planned to ask Evelyn to go home with them. Since the secret was out, and they all lived in the Rainbow Terrace employee apartments on the same floor, it was a good chance to have her over as a guest. Chef Sue even generously offered to cook a special meal for Evelyn tonight. Evelyn was hesitant for a second, but when she heard the last part, she refused with firm, righteous conviction. No, next time. I have to work overtime." With that invitation declined, the couple decided to call Anna and Wyatt. But when they called Anna's phone, Annie Cakes also said she was busy with work and would have to reschedule. As for young Master Wei, he had apparently left early. Though as Anna was giving her righteous excuse, her voice sounded like it was coming from an elevator, tinged with the familiar sound of someone sucking in a sharp breath through gritted teeth. After hanging up, Leo explained the situation to his girlfriend. Claire, however, had a thoughtful look on her face. She looked at her boyfriend. "Anna's company is called Arya. Does Arya have a parent company?" Leo naturally didn't know the answer to that. Claire took out her phone and sent a quick text to her capable assistant, Si Chun, back at Sterling Holdings headquarters, asking her to look into it. The assistant, who had been promoted from the front desk by Claire last year, was incredibly efficient. The results of the investigation were sent to little Miss Sue's phone in no time. Claire read the message. A smile crept on her lips. "Just as I thought." Leo looked at his girlfriend curiously. "What is it?" Claire put her phone away in high spirits. She leaned in, planted a loud kiss on her boyfriend's lips, and announced with a radiant smile, "The Wei family is ours." Leo had no idea what his girlfriend meant by that. She wouldn't tell him when he asked, just mysteriously said he would find out in due time. Then she started excitedly discussing with him how to divide and use the massive Wei family fortune once it was theirs. She was so excited she barely slept all night. Even a friendship vibrating bed was rarely used. It was only turned on twice. The last few days before the New Year holiday arrived, life went on as usual. During these last few days, Leo took some time to visit the Happy Nest headquarters on the 61st floor and held a year-end review meeting with David Chung for the employees. The stingy, black-hearted capitalist was unusually generous, handing out substantial bonuses, which earned him a chorus of cheers from the entire company. All hail Little Boss Lin. He also held the title of the big boss of Mako Entertainment. So he went to the Mako headquarters on Kongping Road to check in on his employees who were diligently working overtime during the winter break, especially the conscientious Yvonne and the forced-to-be conscientious Isabella Zhao. He also treated everyone to a meal at a high-end restaurant. The brutally exploited Isabella Zhao channeled her indignation into her appetite. She was determined to eat until she dropped, vowing that if she didn't bankrupt her boss today, she would write her name backward. She ordered 10 servings of foie gras, 10 plates of salmon, and 2 large platters of king crab legs. She ate until she nearly passed out. Her colleagues watched in horror, cautiously trying to talk her down. With a piece of salmon sashimi still in her mouth, Isabella waved her hand grandly and mumbled, I'm fine. I can chill eat. Today the boss is paying. A member of the art team timidly spoke up. But team leader, this is a buffet. Isabella Zhao, Gak. After visiting both sets of employees on the last day before the New Year holiday, Leo went back to the Sterling estate with Claire. The Sterling family gathering this time was still crowded, but it lacked some of the previous boisterousness. The younger family members all seemed a bit timid. At the dinner table, Leo looked around curiously. Why are there fewer people than last time? The other Sterling descendants' expressions stiffened. A wave of indignant grief washed over them, but they dared not speak. Why else? The ones who were missing were all dealt with by your damn wife. After dinner, the couple went to the head of the family's reception room. The chairman of Sterling Holdings sat at the solid wood tea table, facing his punk son-in-law. His aura was as imposing as ever, and he was about to start his usual lecture when his daughter casually interrupted. Leo and I are going back to his hometown tomorrow. You still have some good liquor, right? Pack some up for me. I'm bringing it to his parents. The words nearly made Charles Sterling choke. He, too, was furious but dare not speak. He watched in agony as his treasured liquor collection was packed, box by box, into a woven bag that his daughter had produced from God knows where. Infinite grief. His precious daughter had a hole in her. She wasn't covering her own father anymore. She was covering someone else's. Damn it. He had to remember this grudge. Father-in-law. He, Charles Sterling, hadn't acknowledged him yet. When he got to Northwood, he would get his good brother to help him take the guy down. The next day, January 23rd, 2009, the 28th day of the last lunar month, the morning city was covered in a blanket of snow. In the falling snow, the lethal and savage couple, braving the cold wind, carried their bags and a chubby parrot onto a train. East Bay was wonderful, a prosperous and bustling metropolis. But wanderers must eventually return home. After half a year, in the festive final month of the year, the boy and girl from the small coastal city returned to Northwood. On the way home again. This year, for the winter break, the young couple no longer needed to take an overnight train. In 2009, a new bullet train service had opened between East Bay and Northwood. In just over 4 hours, they could cross nearly 1,000 kilometers, delivering the wandering children back to their hometown. It was, of course, a great thing. But for Leo, along with a sense of relief, there was also a touch of regret. The story of squeezing onto a small bunk bed in an overnight train compartment and making some beautiful music had officially become a limited edition. He vaguely remembered the first time they took the train from Northwood to East Bay for college, hearing the melodious song of the couple in the bunk next to them. At that time, the boy and girl, who were still just reasonable desk mates, were thin-skinned. Listening to it made their hearts pound. Now they were an old married couple. If they ran into Brandon and Michelle again, they could have a sing-off to see whose voice was louder. His girlfriend's slender hand waved in front of his face. What are you thinking about? Leo snapped back to reality, his expression righteous. Nothing. Just homesick. Claire looked at her boyfriend suspiciously, not quite believing him. I feel like you're thinking about something unhealthy, but she had no proof. She had to reluctantly accept his fabricated excuse. It was just noon, and the couple was getting hungry. They decided to head to the dining car to grab a couple of takeout boxes for a simple meal. In the dining car, they bought their food and found a table to sit at. The box meals on the bullet train were expensive and tasted mediocre, but with the snowy scenery flying by the window and the thought of returning to Northwood, their spirits were high. The couple ate and chatted, laughing together. Their striking looks and charisma inevitably drew the attention of other passengers. Most people who saw the handsome Leo and the cool, radiant Claire couldn't help but sigh in admiration. They're so perfect for each other. But a few people saw them and froze for a moment. Then they called out in surprise, "Leo the legend? Campus Queen Sue?" Hearing their names, the couple turned, surprised. The faces were somewhat familiar. They realized they were fellow alumni from Northwood High. Back in school, they might have only exchanged a few nods, but now, meeting by chance on the train back to Northwood, it felt wonderfully familiar. They chatted and learned that the others also went to college in East Bay. Their winter break had started a while ago, but they had stayed to have some fun before buying tickets home just before the new year. The alumnus got excited and, before Leo and Claire could stop him, rushed off towards the other cars. Wait here. I'll go get everyone. The couple hadn't even had time to react before their schoolmates disappeared in a hurry. He hadn't even gotten far before he started yelling at the top of his lungs. Northwood High. Everyone over here. The power couple is in the dining car. The next moment, the train car seemed to fall silent for an instant. Then a commotion erupted, boiling over into a frenzy. Leo and Claire had underestimated the number of alumni on this train. They had also underestimated their own legendary status among the Northwood High community. With that one powerful shout, the two adjacent cars erupted. Within minutes, the dining car was packed to the brim with Northwood High graduates. Even more were rushing over from cars further down the train, having heard the news late. They scrambled to get here, pushing and shoving, craning their necks to get a look. Where are they? Where are they? For real? Are they actually here? Let me see. The alumni who were closer had already squeezed their way to Leo and Claire's table, excitedly chattering with the two honorary alumni of their alma mater. They mentioned that even at their universities in East Bay and Portland, they had heard stories about the lethal and savage couple. Some even said their own schools had inexplicably formed some kind of anti-Northwood cult. They thought it was interesting to hear their high school's name so far from home, so they joined on the spot. More and more people gathered, eventually attracting the attention of the conductor and the train police. The female chief conductor hurried over with a frowning officer, pushing through the crowd. What's going on? You need to maintain order in the car. You're all college students. Don't you know better? But when they got closer and saw Leo and Claire surrounded by the crowd, both the conductor and the officer froze. Then, their faces lit up with surprise. It's you. It was a coincidence of epic proportions. The crew on this train was the exact same crew from the train Leo and Claire had taken to East Bay for the first time. On that trip, the criminal Gavin Zhang had taken little Mia hostage. In that critical moment, the lethal and savage couple had worked together to subdue the criminal and save Mia. Not only had Mia's mother, Chloe Chu, been eternally grateful, but the train crew had also been left with a deep impression. They never expected to meet again over a year later on this brand new bullet train. The officer's frown immediately smoothed out. The beautiful and gentle chief conductor was overjoyed. She had rushed over thinking there was another dangerous situation, but now her heart was at ease. She waved for the college students to return to their seats. Then she turned and excitedly called her colleagues over. Quick, the power couple from last year is here. The Northwood High students, who were being herded back to their seats, were stunned. Seeing the beautiful female attendants being so warm and friendly to Leo and Claire, even clamoring to take pictures with them, they were even more dumbfounded. Wait a minute, the title power couple is famous in the railway industry, too? The commotion attracted the attention of the other passengers on the train. They didn't know what was happening, but rumors began to spread through the cars. Did you hear? Apparently, a young couple who fought off a criminal on a train last year are on this train today. They took down an armed criminal with their bare hands. What? The criminal had a gun. It wasn't one criminal. It was 2 against 10. The rumors grew more and more absurd. Did you hear? There are 2 superheroes on our train. Last year, a train derailed, and the 2 of them carried it and flew it all the way to East Bay. Huh? Why would superheroes take a train? This is a society of laws. Even superheroes have to buy a ticket. What's the problem with that? Reasonable. The excitement lasted all the way until the train pulled into the station. The enthusiasm of the Chinese people for watching a spectacle and gossiping is eternally high, regardless of time or place. Even though they had no idea what was happening, more than half the passengers on the train, fueled by their burning curiosity, had made a special trip to the dining car. Superhero couple, the kind that could carry a train and fly. They had to see it for themselves. Leo and Claire were caught between laughter and tears, but they couldn't escape the overwhelming enthusiasm of the passengers. They were stuck in their seats in the dining car, unable to leave as waves of visitors came and went. There were even parents who brought their children over. One little boy, his big eyes wide with admiration, timidly handed Leo a small notebook. Mr. Superman, can I have your autograph? Leo nearly choked. Fine. He's just a kid. I'll let slide. He signed a notebook for the little boy, then took out his own little notebook and handed it over. Here, you sign one for me. This grudge is noted. I'll get my revenge in 18 years when you're all grown up. The train arrived at the station. The lethal and savage couple thought they could finally breathe a sigh of relief. But they never expected that just as they got off the train and were lining up to exit, another large crowd came rushing towards them. There were Northwood High alumni and other passengers who hadn't managed to see the spectacle earlier. Now, they were all rushing over in a noisy crowd. Quick, quick! The power couple is up ahead. Power couple? I thought it was a superhero couple. Doesn't matter, we can see both at the same time. When they saw Leo and Claire, who were impossible to miss, the crowd's eyes lit up, and they surged forward. Over here. There were many people waiting outside the platform to pick up passengers. Seeing the commotion inside, they were all stunned. What's going on? A celebrity meet and greet. A star came to a small town like Northwood. After asking around, they were shocked. The cast of the Power Couple movie is filming here. The next second, their blood was boiling. Charge! The scene instantly became even more intense, with the clamor of a festival. The people of Northwood, they love a good spectacle. Whatever it is, just join in. Kevin Zhao and Tessa Yuan, who had come specifically to pick up their best friends, were dumbfounded. No way. This is too much, isn't it? Kevin looked on with a hint of envy. He grabbed a guy who was excitedly pushing forward. Hey, I know that power couple. The three of us are a team. I'm the eagle. The guy shot Kevin a disdainful look. You, the eagle is clearly up there. He pointed towards the crowd. And there, a certain chubby parrot was flapping its wings triumphantly, circling above its master and mistress. Don't push. Don't push. Line up slowly. Lord Reasonable was clearly enjoying this reception. A crown prince, accepting the greetings of his court. Perfectly reasonable. After finally escaping the enthusiastic crowd of fans and leaving the station, the couple got into their friend's car. They breathed a sigh of relief, looked at each other, and sighed. The folks back home are so enthusiastic. Tessa, sitting in the passenger seat, couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. You, too. The name Power Couple is going to be famous all over Northwood. Only Kevin, gripping the steering wheel, was still grumbling. Damn it. It gets worse every year. Now I don't even get to be the eagle. They chatted and laughed all the way back to Leo's home. When Leo and Claire got out of the car, they insisted their friends come up for dinner. Taking the elevator upstairs, they walked down the familiar hallway to the front door. Since they hadn't told his parents their exact arrival time, it was Kevin who called out as they entered. Andy, we're back. A flurry of footsteps was heard. Leo's parents rushed out from inside, overjoyed to see their son, daughter-in-law, and their friends. Oh my, you're back. Why didn't you say anything? Robert, get cooking. They had a lively dinner at the Wallace home. At the table, Leo's parents doted on Claire and Tessa, constantly putting food on their plates. The two unfortunate brothers, Leo and Kevin, were completely ignored. Leo was used to it. He turned to his best friend. How are you holding up? Kevin didn't even look up from his food, his mouth full of braised pork. Oh, I'm used to it too. At my house, my parents treat Tessa like their own daughter, as long as I don't starve. Leo understood. The two brothers exchanged a look of mutual sympathy. After dinner, they were sent to the kitchen to wash the dishes. Susan Wallace sat on the sofa with Claire and Tessa, happily chatting. Robert Wallace had been with them, but had to take a call. He stood to the side, listening to his little brother's rambling. Work has been so busy, I probably won't be able to get back to Northwood to go fishing with you for a while. By the way, bro, can you do me a favor? My precious little daughter ran off with my treasured liquor when she came back, and she's giving it to that punk's dad. Can you believe it? If you have time, go to my house, get that liquor back for me. You can keep it at your place for now. If you like it, drink it all. Just don't let that punk's dad get his hands on it. On the other end of the line, the chairman of Sterling Holdings spoke with righteous indignation. Here, Robert Wallace held his phone, looking at the large woven bag of expensive liquor his daughter-in-law had brought him. He thought for a moment and nodded righteously. No problem. After finishing up in the kitchen, Leo and Kevin joined the others in the living room, just as Claire and Tessa were finishing their chat with Susan. It was still early. The four of them decided to go for a walk to digest their food. Downstairs, Tessa suddenly had an idea. Hey, how about we go for a walk around the school? The four of them had acted on a whim. They drove all the way to Northwood High. But when they arrived and got out of the car, they saw that the campus was completely dark behind the main gate. They remembered that they had returned late in the winter break, and with the new year approaching, even the seniors had been let out. The school was obviously closed, but since they were already here, there was no way they were going home disappointed. Kevin volunteered to go first. He went to the wall next to the main gate and expertly prepared to climb over. He had just made it to the top when a security guard on patrol caught him with a flashlight. The bright beam shone on Kevin, perched on the wall, looking suspiciously like a thief. The guard almost called the police on the spot to arrest this nighttime intruder. Leo, Claire, and Tessa hurried over to apologize and explain. Fortunately, the guard saw that they looked like good people. After a few words, he realized that Leo and Claire looked familiar. He thought for a moment. Then it hit him. He had seen these two on the school's honor roll board, honorary alumni of their alma mater. His attitude immediately softened. Hearing that they had just returned to Northwood for the holidays and wanted to revisit their old school, he readily agreed to let them in. He opened a gate and let the three of them walk right through. He even offered to be their guide and show them the recent changes to the campus. They chatted and laughed as they walked on. Kevin, still sitting on the wall, stared blankly at their departing backs, then suddenly came to his senses. "Hey, wait, I'm still up here." After bidding farewell to the enthusiastic security guard, the four of them strolled through the Northwood High campus. Under the moonlight, the school was serene. The teaching buildings stood quietly in the night, bathed in a soft, gentle glow. It was a far cry from the usual hustle and bustle, allowing them to experience a rarely seen side of Northwood's best high school. They had entered through the main gate, passing the two main classroom buildings first. Further ahead, they could see the school's track and cafeteria. In the bright moonlight, they could faintly see what looked like a new construction site in a corner next to the cafeteria, already half-built. Leo and Claire were curious. Kevin and Tessa, however, seemed unfazed. Tessa smiled and explained that's a new teaching building the school is planning. They started construction last fall. The number of new students applying to Northwood High has increased a lot in the last 2 years, and the original 3 buildings are getting too crowded. The lethal and savage couple understood. They were also happy for their alma mater. Even though it was constantly being told to go to hell, the school was indeed getting better and better. The black-hearted capitalist Leo Hammer Wallace was already calculating how the increase in students would make it easier to recruit them as laborers. Northwood High was his personal talent pipeline. Kevin chuckled mysteriously. The new building will need a name once it's finished. Apparently, the school is letting the students vote on it this time. Guess what name got the most votes? Leo and Claire exchanged a look. They had no idea. The original 3 buildings had proper, serious names. Logically, the new building's name should follow that style. They guessed a few times, but were wrong. Kevin grinned from ear to ear. Can't guess, can you? The name with the most votes is Reasonable. Ha ha. Ray. Sonable. Leo and Claire were completely baffled. Giant question marks appeared above their heads. They looked at Kevin as if he were a con artist. What kind of school names a building something so absurd? But Tessa couldn't hold back her laughter either and vouched for her boyfriend. It's true, you have no idea, but in the last couple of years, the most popular catchphrase among the students at Northwood High is reasonable. I wonder who corrupted them. Anyway, in a naming poll for the new building, Reasonable got first place with over 1,300 votes, a landslide victory. Oh, and second place was Lethal and Savage, with 300 votes. Leo, Claire. They couldn't help but look at the unfinished building under the moonlight again. They imagined the new building with a golden sign that read Reasonable, the 3 existing buildings, and then the Reasonable building. The thought made the couple's mouths twitch slightly. All right then, Reasonable. After wandering around the campus for a while, the 4 of them split up. Kevin and Tessa wanted to check out the lecture hall. That was where they had studied together in the last month before their final exams, exchanging flirtatious glances and nurturing their relationship. They wanted to revisit the good old days. Speaking of revisiting old places, Leo and Claire had somewhere to go too. They made their way through the dark admin building, up the stairs to the 6th floor, where a familiar iron gate blocked their path. Leo grinned. He rummaged under a discarded flower pot in the corner and skillfully retrieved the key. It had been almost 2 years, and he didn't know if anyone else had discovered this secret. But even if they had, the later students had tacitly protected it. He unlocked the gate, and the couple stepped onto the marble floor of the school observatory. They looked around. It was just as they remembered. A warm, nostalgic feeling washed over them. Claire walked up to Leo, her gaze warm and soft. Do you remember that time I came here looking for you? Leo nodded without hesitation. Of course. That night, during study hall, I snuck up here to look at the stars. Who would have thought you'd pop up like a ghost? Ouch. He was cut off by a pinch on his side. Claire was indignant. What do you mean like a ghost? You idiot. He had almost ruined the warm, nostalgic atmosphere. He immediately started apologizing profusely, and only then did his girlfriend huffily retract her hand. The couple sat down on the steps. They looked up at the observatory's curved glass dome. In the night sky, the moon had just hidden behind the clouds, and the light dimmed. Then, twinkling stars began to appear one by one. Leo stared, lost in thought. Claire watched him, equally lost in thought. The starlight fell on her boyfriend's face, faintly outlining the somewhat immature features of the boy from 2 years ago. Back then, she had felt a pang of sympathy for him. Now, She felt a sense of contentment and warmth. Now, she was right here by his side, bathed in the starlight of this small world. Leo. Her voice brought him back. He turned to meet her sparkling, bright eyes. He smiled. No words were needed. He leaned forward and gently kissed her lips. Starlight from hundreds of thousands of light years away fell through the observatory's glass dome, just as it had on that night 2 years ago, illuminating the couple. The light washed over the marble floor like a tide, enveloping them in its glow, as if bearing witness, and offering a blessing, grand and romantic. After coming down from the observatory, Leo and Claire didn't rush to meet up with their friends. They crossed the skywalk from the admin building and arrived at the humanities building, where the senior classes were held. Hand in hand, the couple strolled leisurely, and before they knew it, they were standing in front of their old classroom, Class 10. 2 years had passed. 2 classes had graduated from Northwood High, but the plaque on the classroom door still read Class 10. It was still the senior Class 10. They just didn't know if the homeroom teacher was still the emotionless Mr. Harrison. Leo pressed his face to the small window on the front door and peered inside. He turned to his girlfriend. "Want to go in?" Claire was tempted, but she glanced at the locked door and frowned. "It's locked. How do we get in?" Leo smiled. Without explaining, he led her a few steps to the back door of the classroom. He pushed, but it wouldn't budge. He took his house key from his pocket, inserted it into the crack of the door, and, after some fiddling, pushed the key upwards. Click! The back door swung open. Claire looked at her boyfriend as if he were a career criminal. "How do you know how to do that?" Leo looked righteous. When you're out in the world, it's perfectly reasonable to have a few tricks up your sleeve for self-defense. Claire thought for a moment and nodded happily. "Reasonable. Teach me later." What power couple? From now on, they were a standard pair of master thieves. To save power, the school had turned off the electricity during the break. They couldn't turn on the lights inside the classroom, but fortunately, the moon emerged from behind the clouds just in time. The bright moonlight broke through the night sky, spilling through the windows onto the desks and floor. They looked around. The layout was familiar, the desks, the podium. The air still seemed to carry the scent of chalk dust. The banner hanging above the blackboard still bore the slogan from 2 years ago. "The stage is as big as your heart." It all felt so familiar. They couldn't help but be flooded with memories of the best moments from their 3 years of high school. Leo's memories of his first 2 years were faint. As a reborn person, that was almost 20 years ago for him, something that had happened in a past life. The same was true for Claire. Their clearest memories of high school were from the spring and early summer of their senior year. The air growing warmer, the afternoon heat blurring their vision, the chirping of cicadas and birds, the fan whirring weakly overhead. It was the time when a coincidental and reasonable pair of desk mates, in the final 100 days before the exams, inevitably grew closer. The lethal and savage couple, the trouble magnet couple, the reasonable couple. 2 years later, they were the envy of countless people, a perfectly matched pair. They were the power couple who had been mobbed for photos on the train home. But it had all started with a bottom-of-the-class slacker and his aloof, campus queen deskmate. The story had begun in this very classroom. Claire walked to the last row of desks by the window, gently running her hand over the 2 adjacent desks. She looked up at Leo, a faint smile on her face. "We used to sit here. You sat here, and I sat here. We had morning reading together, went to class, and ate breakfast. I always brought you breakfast." Leo nodded with emotion. "At the time, I really thought you just bought too much. But you bought an extra portion every day. I was wondering how someone with your intelligence got into Northwood High. Hey, I was wrong. We can talk about this. Don't use your hands." Sensing danger, he quickly bowed and apologized. Only then did the annoyed campus queen, Sue, huffily put down the canvas shoe she had taken off to use as a weapon. But she didn't put it back on just yet. She dangled it from her slender finger, a clear threat to her boyfriend. One more wrong word, and her size 38 pink canvas shoe would be flying through the air to meet his face. Leo wiped his brow and wisely changed the subject. I never would have thought that the campus queen of Northwood High would bring me breakfast." He paused, as if remembering something, and smiled. "And I never would have thought that my aloof deskmate, who I had barely spoken to for 2.5 years of high school, would wake up from a nap one afternoon in our senior year, just before the final exams, and suddenly throw herself into my arms." As he spoke, his thoughts seemed to travel back in time to that summer afternoon, buzzing with the sound of cicadas. That sudden waft of fragrance. That moment when the girl's soft body pressed against his, so unexpected and thrilling. Listening to her boyfriend, Claire also looked at the 2 desks in front of her. In a daze, the scene from that day flashed before her eyes. It was a desperate grasp in a world of darkness. And when the light returned, the first thing she saw was the unfamiliar, yet familiar face of the boy. The shock and disbelief of that moment. The excitement and joy. Even though so much time had passed, it all felt like yesterday. She still remembered every emotion, every detail, even the speed of her heartbeat and the solid, reassuring feeling of hugging him tightly. Claire smiled faintly. Leo nodded. On that afternoon 2 years ago, his campus queen deskmate had given the same explanation to the teachers and students. It was the only thing that had saved him from the wrath of the mob. But then, as if remembering something, Leo frowned. You seem to have nightmares often. This wasn't the first time his girlfriend had said this. That senior year afternoon. The autumn evening on the tree-lined street after the welcome gala celebration. In front of a dilapidated sanctuary on Spirit Springs Mountain. Looking back now, he realized that the word nightmare had come up many times. Leo thought for a moment and looked at his girlfriend with a serious suggestion. How about we ask Master Sijin to perform an exorcism for you later, or maybe the Bodhisattva? The one at the old stone chapel on Serenity Peak had enjoyed so much incense. She ought to do something. Otherwise, he'd find a chance to scrape all the gold powder off that statue. Claire smiled. No need. Having you is enough. Leo frowned. I can't help with that. I can't exactly enter your dreams. If he had that kind of power, a nightmare would be nothing. He'd transform into a Power Ranger in her dream and blast all the demons to smithereens. Claire shook her head seriously. That's not it. She looked up at her boyfriend. In the moonlight, her face was radiant, her smile breathtakingly beautiful, and her clear, pleasant voice, like pearls falling on a jade plate, echoed softly in the quiet, moonlit classroom. With you here, no matter how many times I fall asleep, you will always wake me from the nightmare. January 24th, the 29th day of the last lunar month. With only 2 days left in the countdown to the new year, the air in the small town of Northwood was thick with festive cheer. Families and workers were all on holiday, finally able to take a breath after a long, busy year and enjoy the break. But some people couldn't afford to relax just yet. For example, the Sweet Return Bakery was still swamped with work. As the year drew to a close, the bakery's business was booming. The Sweet Return brand was now firmly established in Northwood. For the locals, when it came to stocking up for the new year, the bakery's pastries and cakes were an essential part of their shopping lists. Especially the Good Luck exam bread, the Berkeley toast, and the cookies stamped with the Northwood High logo. These were the hot-ticket items that parents clamored for. In the morning, Leo and Claire woke up early and went to the main bakery to help out. The moment they walked in, they were stunned by the scene. What a crowd! The place was packed. The main store had become so popular that Susan Wallace had made an executive decision to rent the adjacent shop, knocking down the wall between them to double the space. Even so, the bakery was still overflowing with enthusiastic customers. A dozen or so beautiful female employees in pink uniforms, sheer stockings, and heels moved through the crowded shop like butterflies, smiling as they recommended the latest popular products to customers. It was tiring, but the thought of the year-end bonus, which was tied directly to the store's performance, kept them going. The busier it got, the more they heard the constant ding-dong of the cash register, the more their faces lit up with joy. When the bell at the entrance chimed, 3 or 4 employees immediately turned in unison, ready to greet the new customer with their most professional and friendly smiles. Welcome, huh? Their smiles froze on their faces. A young man and woman had just walked in. The man was handsome and cool, his features clearly inherited from the bakery's owner. The woman was coolly radiant, so breathtakingly beautiful that her mere presence made the dozen or so pretty employees in the shop seem dull in comparison. More than dull, they were utterly shocked. In an instant, the employees' eyes widened in unison. Oh no, the junior boss's wife is back. The first to experience Miss Sterling's management style were not the employees of Sterling Holdings. It was, in fact, these very employees of the Sweet Return Bakery. In terms of seniority, the staff at Sterling Holdings were mere amateurs. And so, when the wife of the junior boss of the Sweet Return Bakery descended upon her most loyal territory, the atmosphere in the entire shop changed in an instant. The customers noticed with confusion that the already friendly and enthusiastic employees had suddenly kicked their enthusiasm up another notch. Their welcomes were more fervent, their work ethic magically elevated to a whole new level. It was like a military operation. Susan Wallace had just come out from the back kitchen. She saw her son and daughter-in-law at a glance and waved happily. You're here. Perfect timing. We're short-staffed. You two can help out. They were already family, so there was no need for formalities. For Susan Wallace, Her greatest joy was watching her daughter-in-law manage the family business with such efficiency. Every time she saw her employees standing at attention, respectfully taking orders from her daughter-in-law, she would be filled with pride, her smile stretching from ear to ear. Right now, the bakery was short-staffed both in the front and the back. Claire had been thinking of helping out in the back with the baking, feeling that her skills had improved greatly over the past 6 months and that she could give the people of Northwood a little taste of Chef Sue's culinary genius. Leo quickly stopped her. These are their hometown folks. It was better to let them have a safe and peaceful new year. So, the tasks were divided. Leo went to the back kitchen to help make pastries. Claire stayed in the front, also changing into a pink employee uniform, and moved through the crowd with a smile, helping to promote and introduce the products. Before long, Kevin and Tessa also came to the shop to help. The two best friends, Leo and Kevin, stayed in the back kitchen, working together seamlessly while chatting. Kevin reported on the situation at the Mako Entertainment branch in Portland, his tone professional and serious, already exuding the air of a branch manager. Finally, he mentioned the female employee named Serafina Vance, still full of praise. She's incredible. I've never seen anyone with such a positive work attitude. She's been texting me for days over the holiday, asking when she could transfer to the East Bay headquarters. She can't wait to get to work. Leo nodded in agreement. The company needed more workhorses like her. No, more talent like her. Don't worry, I'll have her transferred to East Bay after the new year. I've already planned out her position. After a brief chat, they had mostly finished their work in the back kitchen. They came out to the front to get some air and check on the situation. Business was still booming. They could see many customers gathered around Claire, who was dressed in her employee uniform. That wasn't surprising. What was strange was that many parents were pushing their children towards Claire, their faces full of anticipation as they said something to her. Then, they saw Claire smile and pat the children on the head. The parents would immediately look overjoyed by a pile of bread and pastries and leave with 1,000 thanks. Leo and Kevin were completely mystified. Tessa came over and explained with a smile. It turned out that the customers had learned of Claire's identity. The county's top scorer in the exams 2 years ago, an honorary alumna of Northwood High, and a top student at Berkeley. People were already clamoring to buy the good luck exam bread. Now, with a real-life academic superstar present, they had to have their children come over and soak up some of that scholarly aura. A pat on the head from the top scorer might just bless them. Getting into a top university would be a breeze, right? Kevin understood. He looked at Claire, surrounded by the crowd, with deep respect. As expected of our class president. She's even delving into metaphysics now. Leo had been watching with an amused smile, finding the whole thing interesting. But soon his brow furrowed. It was one thing for parents to bring their little kids over to get their heads patted for good luck. But what was with the high school boys, and even some college-age guys, shamelessly squeezing their way to his girlfriend? Were they trying to take advantage of her? Leo, hammer, Wallace rolled up his sleeves and charged into the fray. Forget a blessing. He was about to give him a concussion.